Hello and welcome back to the Rewind Room, everyone, the podcast where we dive deep into everything nostalgic. I'm Ramona,
And I'm Jon.
and in today's episode, we're turning back the clock to the early 2000s and stepping into the magical world of movie theaters. Think midnight premieres, 3D spectacles, and the unforgettable buzz of that release you couldn't miss. From scratch and sniff cards to the rise of IMAX, in the iconic smell of popcorn, we're reliving the movie going moments that made those years so memorable. So
Yeah.
grab your oversized soda, find your favorite seat, and let's rewind to a time when the theater experience was pure magic. But before we get started, I'll pass the mic over to Jon.
Thank you very much, my friend. How y'all doing this week? Hope everyone is doing well. All is well on this end, thank goodness. It's really great to be back in here and to be recording once again. And doing another episode of Rewind Room. If one thing I absolutely love about Rewind Room is just the amount of time we get to sit and we just get to shoot the breeze about stuff that we grew up with, and it's just so much fun. But before we get started with this episode, I do have a few things I would like to get in. So, first off, I would like to give a shout out to a YouTuber who I've grown a bit fond of, just because her content is really awesome and I can relate to it in many ways. And it is Bathsheba Dueck is her name, and she does a lot of content focused mostly kind of on her past, some nostalgia, and big one of the big ones is fashion. One of her channels before she formed her self-named channel was Cynical Duchess, where she mostly focused on fashion and travel, but she just recently uploaded a video called Going Back to Physical Media for a Week, in which she went around and started collecting vinyl, DVDs, and basically just anything from that is considered a physical format. It was really cool, just really awesome. So, guys, go check her out. She's really awesome. She's got some great content, and looking forward to see what you do in the future, Batsheva. So, just wanted to get that in first. And also, we have an email to read today from one of our listeners. It is my good friend Willa, who actually is a major supporter of the podcast. So shout out to you,
Whoop,
Willa.
whoop.
Thank you so much for being so supportive of the show and for just being an awesome friend all of these years. But she sent us an email. It's actually in regards to our last episode, which was on department stores and department store memories and going back and looking at different kinds of malls and such, which if you haven't listened to, please go back and listen to that episode because that is a great episode and we have some good stuff in there you will not want to miss. But um what else but basically what she would wanted us to do is she sent us this email and asked if we could read it on the air, so that is exactly what I'm going to do. So thank you, Willa, for sending us this, and the subject is why I love Joanne's Fabric Store. Hi, my name is Willa, and this is why I love Joanne's store. I grew up with Joanne's, and it was one of my favorite stores since I was little. A few years ago, I found out about diamond bead paintings. Then I started doing them, and I got addicted. Then I looked at Joanne's store and found out they had a lot of diamond bead paintings more than Amazon. So I started to do diamond beads and just started shopping more at Joann's. I am sad that it is closing, and that will always be my favorite store. Goodbye, Joann's. Hopefully, another store is going to come and take Joann's place, and that will be amazing and cool. But Joann's was a really good store. Me and my parents would shop in there when I was little, and I can't believe it is closing. This is the reason I love Joann's. And wow, thank you so much, Willa, for that. It's stories like these that allow nostalgia to really live because, really when we look back in our past, we remember the little moments, and sometimes something as little as finding a fascination with something or finding something that becomes not just a hobby but a lifestyle can be so life-changing. I mean, I think I can say the same with a place like Bookman's, for instance. God forbid if that place was to ever close, it would break my heart because of how much I love to collect. So thank you for sharing your story with us, Willa. And actually, funny enough, Willa is a pro at diamond bead paintings because this picture behind me, if you're watching on YouTube, the picture behind me of my Slytherin is actually a diamond bead painting she made for me. It was a birthday gift, and I have another one that you guys can't see on camera that's sitting across from me that she took of when I graduated college. So Willa, you're awesome. Thanks for being an awesome friend, and thank you for that email.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, Willa. And if you guys have anything to tell us, anything regarding episodes, or you just want to talk to us, go ahead and email us, DM us on the Instagram, all that good stuff. We can read it on an episode, or we can read it on a live, or even on our stories.
Absolutely. And if for any reason you would not like us to read it at all, but you still just want to share with us, please, by all means, feel free to share. Just
Yep,
let us know if you would not like us to share it. Just write in the bottom, say, please do not read on air. And we are still so appreciative and we'll still read it. We'll still look at it and we still would love to hear from you. But
absolutely.
just really quick, Ramona, before we get into this episode, do you have any memories of Joanne's
Oh,
or any things?
I have some pretty fond memories of going there every Christmas to get some ornaments, but I know for a fact my brother and a couple of my friends loved venturing over there for their their fashion expertises, and they would sew and like to sift through
Sure.
all of the different cloths there. So I know for a fact it held a place in that community, and to a lot of people, really, it held a fond place in their hearts.
Absolutely. And the one thing I will say about Joanne, especially here in Flagstaff is it's quite scarce to find sewing and fabric stores now. A lot of the mom and pop sewing shops that were downtown and such have unfortunately gone out of business due to one, not really being in as much demand as they used to be, but secondly, because stores like, and I'm not trying to give Joanne's a bad name whatsoever. They did an amazing job, but bigger chains and bigger stores and things like that sometimes also put them out as well. But obviously, we know that's just competition. That's just how business works. But I'm not faulting Joanne one bit because they're a phenomenal store, and I think that they actually widened it for people in Fly. Because I mean, obviously, you have people that'll go to a mom and pop, but Joanne is, it's like, okay, I have a fabric store, and
Yeah.
such. It is definitely sad to see that it's going under with a lot of other businesses. I know we mentioned some in the last episode. We mentioned Party City going under. We mentioned Walden Books going under. We mentioned a lot of those stores that
Toys R
unfortunately,
Us.
Toys R Us, thank you, that have went under. And unfortunately, Joann's is about to join them. So thank you, Joanne, for all the wonderful support you gave. Thank you for getting my friend Willa into diamond bead paintings. She's so talented and gave me so many gifts, and we're gonna miss you. And we only look forward to what's gonna be next because I think in Flag now, the only place you can get fabric now is Hobby Lobby, and they have a much more limited selection than Joanne did. So I hope that there'll just be more options for people.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, with that, um, well, let's get into the episode. Let's actually get into the meat and potatoes of this whole thing. So this
Let's
first
do it.
segment, as my friend Ramona mentioned, we are talking about movie theater madness. Basically, our memories of going to the movies when we were young. So basically, around the early 2000s and all the way until even the present. Because the thing is that not only do we still go to the movies now, but we still have so many more memories. And the thing is that while we might say that a certain era of movie making or movies coming out might have been the so-called golden age, there's really no way you can define that because there are still great movies coming out, is the thing. And sure, you might not see as many as you might have seen when you were young, but they're still out there. Sometimes you just have to take a chance, and sometimes you just have to go in and watch what's going on. But for when we look at this, a lot of our memories first formulate, I think, probably from the early 2000s mostly because that was when we were young, when we probably first learned what movies were, and especially, moreover, what a movie theater was and its premise. And so, when you look at a movie theater, back in like the early 2000s, it always felt like there was something big going on. You know what I mean? It's kind of like one of those things where, it felt like there was always some kind of event going on. There were a lot of franchises that were kicking off in the early 2000s that now are seen as some of the most timeless of classics. You have big blockbuster names, like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Spider-Man, Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, and so many more. I mean, I can't list them all. I were thinking one. You have like just so many of those different franchises were kicking off at the time, and it was just so incredible just to basically see where film was really going, because it felt like no matter what in any given year there was some kind of event going on. You know what I mean, Ramona? It's kind of like just
Oh,
one of those things.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's just kind of like one of those things where it's like, it always just felt like something was going on. And now, don't get me wrong, we still have franchises, but a lot of it has been taken over by remakes and sequels to films that came out over like a bunch of decades ago. And the thing is that while some of these are really cool, unfortunately, um, it just feels like now that this is just taken over the box office. And the thing is, it doesn't always work because not everyone has the same goal in mind when trying to go for that nostalgic feel. Some of them are just going for a cash grab. Some of them are just trying to profit off the name, and many unfortunately don't always honor the work that came before it and such. But yeah, what are some memories you got, Ramona, of going to the theaters when you were young? Because I think you might have a few more than me, because I didn't start going to the cinema until I think it was probably 2005, 2006.
Well, the average movie experience I experienced, the average American experience, which is,
Hmm.
going up to the concessions, waiting in lines,
Oh yeah.
playing in the arcade, being mesmerized by the cardboard cutouts, and sitting in the theater waiting for the feature to start. But before that, uh,
Hmm.
we as children, as very young children,
Hmm.
would go. It was like going to a Disneyland,
Oh,
like
absolutely.
you were saying, it was the spectacle, it was the event, it was the place to be on a Friday and Saturday night.
Hmm.
And the reason why we are specifically talking about the 2000s to the 2010s and on is because that's what we experienced.
Sure.
And that's what we remember, and we obviously don't want to talk about an era that we didn't live in this specific scenario, just because we want to enlighten you guys the best way that we can through our own experiences, so that you can live vicariously through that, and so we can
Absolutely.
vicariously live through the memories that we share.
Oh yeah.
um
That's why we do the
but
podcast.
amen, amen, there we go, there we go.
Yep, absolutely.
But let me just give you a quick rundown of what the average movie going experience was. So
Please.
concessions usually consisted of popcorn, soda, candy. Post 2010 actually included some alcohol options too, and even more food options. So
Some
back
still
in the
do.
day, and some still do,
Some still
exactly.
do, yeah.
I know for a fact now I can go to Cinemark and get a margarita if I wanted to,
There
which
you
back in
go.
the day you couldn't really do that. You could sneak it in, but you couldn't buy it there.
Absolutely.
And let's talk about the lines. Oh my gosh.
Hmm.
Usually it was an issue in the era of the 2000s to the 2010s, or before the 2010s, really. It didn't start in
Hmm.
the 2000s, because assigned seating wasn't the norm.
Nope.
On the night of major premieres, you had to arrive at least an hour early to guarantee one, a spot in line, but
Yep.
also a spot in the movie theater.
A good
Um,
spot.
a good spot too. In this time, I remember going to a movie and it being overpacked to where people
Oh
had
yeah.
to stand to watch the movie or sit on the floor, which now obviously is not up to code. But
Hmm.
back in the day, that's how things were. Sometimes
Oh
you had
yeah.
someone in your lap,
Oh yeah, no
someone you
joke.
knew in your lap.
So
Yeah.
funny enough, before you continue really quick, I just wanted to say I remember when Star Wars The Force Awakens came out. I
Mm-hmm.
remember my friend, one of my good friends, he got to the theater. The movie started at 7 at night. He
Mm-hmm.
got to the theater at 1 in the afternoon, sat outside the theater. And when I say theater, I'm not talking about the complex. I'm talking about the actual theater that was going to be showing the movie that night.
Oh yeah.
He sat out there since 1 o'clock that afternoon. He had a bunch of blankets with him, and he knew what he was going to do. In many theaters, especially the ones here in Flag, and I know you remember this, Ramona, does the word bar rail seats means something to you.
Oh yeah. You put your feet up and you put
Yep.
your hands behind your back and you
Yep.
relax for the next 2.5 hours of
Yep.
your feature.
Exactly. Now you can reserve those seats and make sure you get a selected seat. Back in the day, you had to fight for those seats.
You had to run.
I've seen people actually get mad, and I haven't seen people throw hands, but I've seen people argue over those seats
Oh yeah.
because of how popular they are, you know.
Absolutely.
And we he wanted to get that rail, and there were going to be like about 9 of us going, but a couple of them were going to arrive late because they had to work, we had school. I actually got out of school early that day because I knew I was going to go watch a movie. I was so excited. I was pumped. And then the next thing you know, I didn't have anything better to do. I said, dude, I'm going to come sit with you and help you hold the seats. I show up. We get there. We get the whole bar rail to ourselves. And the next thing you know, by the time they're about to open the theater, the line's going around all the way back to the concession stand. That's
Yep.
how big the line was.
That's how it was. Now you don't see a single line for pretty much anything except for the
Nope.
alcohol line.
Pretty much. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
pretty much.
But while our parents were waiting in the lines for us so
Mm.
graciously,
Oh my gosh.
we had time to go to the arcade.
Ah, yes.
And there all you needed were a few coins because that a few coins could go a long way. Let me tell you that. You had
Oh yeah.
basketball hoop games, you had Dance Dance Revolution, skee ball, air hockey, shooting games,
Mhm.
basically anything under the sun that you can think
Oh
of an
yeah.
arcade was at a movie theater arcade. And half the time that was more fun than the actual movie you would watch.
Pretty much. I mean, I always remember there were times even because back in the day at before they moved Harkins across town here in Flag, the thing is that I don't know if you knew this or not, but the old Harkins, which was over on the other side of town
Yeah, it
in
was
the
where the DM or the MVD was or
yeah, and
is.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly where it is now. Funny enough, basically, when it was there, the arcade was off to the side. And back then, the movie theater people weren't always checking for your tickets or stuff. You could just go and have an arcade time if you wanted because it wasn't
Whoa,
inside the actual theater complex area after you buy your tickets. It was
that's
in the
funny.
area beforehand. So oftentimes we'd go in there and we would just because we wanted to play something like Dance Dance Revolution or I don't know if you remember. Do you remember the Guitar Hero kiosks?
Oh yeah, Guitar Hero. Oh, absolutely. And then
Yeah.
the Fruit Ninja kiosk too.
Yeah, Fruit Ninja kiosk. I think they eventually brought a Super Mario like driving thing,
Oh
kind of
really?
similar
That's
to the
cool.
Forza games and those kind of things. So, oh my gosh, they were it was fun. The arcade was one of my favorite parts of the theater.
Well, you mentioned a couple of um or it might have even been last episode, but the Terminator Salvation game. Oh
Oh
my
yes,
gosh.
yes,
Oh my,
I
I never got to
remember.
play it because how many coins it was, but
Yeah.
I remember seeing kids play it. Oh my gosh, I was so jealous.
hmm Yeah, because I remember most arcade games were either like one or two tokens. The Terminator Salvation was always four.
Yeah, yeah,
So
it was
you,
always really expensive. Yeah,
yeah.
same thing with like the Night of the Living Dead games, like the House of
Oh,
the
Night of the
Living
Living Dead.
Dead, all of those. Yeah.
The one that was really expensive at the old Harkins, they actually, at one point before people got too rough with it, they actually had a Mortal Kombat game there.
Oh my gosh, that is
They
awesome.
had Mortal
That is
Kombat,
awesome.
but too many people were beating the crap out of that thing, trying to win. And then sometimes when you walk in, you would just hear "Get over here," or you'd hear
Fatality.
yeah, Fate flawless victory, something like that, and there I that's where I first learned what Mortal Kombat was actually.
That's
Before
funny.
any of the video games, before anything else, that's how I knew what Mortal
Yeah.
Kombat was. For one, the thing was getting beat up, but two, people also complained because of how graphic Mortal Kombat is.
Yeah. No,
Which I
that's fair.
mean,
That's fair.
I mean the arcade version's tame compared to a lot of the newer versions, but
Well, the arcade version of games are catered to children, really, and young
true.
adults. Because even in the Guitar Hero versions, they didn't have explicit songs.
Oh yes.
Whereas in the at-home version, you had a variety of different songs that you could choose from, ranging from all ages to explicit. But they wanted to keep those specifically family friendly, which
Yep.
absolutely makes sense.
Well, yeah, because I remember even in what's the song? Oh man, I'm trying to remember the name of the track. It was from Guitar Hero 3. Because there were some songs that had some profanity in them, of course. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
even still, because it's a T-rated game, they had to edit some of those songs down. Like Holiday in
yeah.
Cambodia had to get edited because it had a slur in the song.
Really,
Um,
really, okay.
yeah, I'm not gonna say the slur, but it's a very, very provocative one. It's used in my opinion, and I know this might be a little controversial, but in my opinion, good context because of
Okay.
what they're trying to get at with the messaging. I mean, it's still a slur nonetheless, but still, it's they use that. I know the song "Devil Went Down to Georgia." They actually cut the line where he says, "I told you once, you SOB, I'm the best that's ever been." Because in the final part of the game, you have to battle the devil, basically
Oh,
the
wow,
guitar
okay.
battle, and the song you play is "The Devil Went Down Georgia," and that song is hard to
You know,
actually beat.
the only time I played Guitar Hero was in movie theater arcades.
Yeah.
I at home played Rock Band.
Oh, Rock Band, good stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. We're gonna have to we'll have to keep this conversation because this is something we'll have to expand on it for sure eventually.
For sure, for sure.
Yep.
But
Mm.
cardboard cutouts, holy cannoli, they used to try back in the day. Do you
Oh yeah.
remember the
Oh yeah.
Simpsons cardboard cutout that they had for their, I think it was like a, what was it,
The Simpsons
2007
movie?
movie? Yeah, the 2007
Oh
movie or
yeah.
something like that.
Oh yeah,
They
with
weren't cardboard. They were made out of plastic. They were life-size versions of
Mhm.
the Simpsons family on their couch. Like
Yeah.
we used to try back in, or people used to try back in the day for cutouts
Yeah.
for promotional cutouts. Depending on the theater, some theaters sell their cutouts to the public.
Yeah.
An insider tip, actually, I got from the Flagstaff manager who used to be a filmmaker alongside myself.
Okay.
He was the manager of Harkins, and he said those cutouts sometimes go to employees if they call dibs. Like, say, they know for a fact that they're putting up a cardboard cutout of, let's say, Transformers 15 or something
Hmm.
like that. And I like it. And I talk to my manager and I say, hey, can I take that home when we're done? Chances are I might be able to take that home. And that is super
Yeah.
cool. And same thing with film posters, too. You can call dibs or even buy them.
Hmm.
Not sure how lenient theaters are nowadays when it comes to sharing their merchandise with the
Hmm.
public, but that was definitely a thing that we sort of experienced
Hmm.
secondhand when we were younger. And
For
then
sure.
lastly, sitting in the theater, that experience alone, it has even changed. And we're going to talk about this later. But
Oh,
prior to the
absolutely.
late 2010s, you had to get to the theater, like we said earlier, super early
Yeah.
to secure a good spot.
Yep.
And some theaters continue to sell tickets without seat assignments. So I assume those theaters continue to have lines. Unfortunately, none of those theaters exist where I live, and I don't think they exist where Jonathan lives either,
No,
because
unfortunately not.
most chain theaters now require assigned seating, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
fortunately.
Yeah, it definitely has its benefits. I mean, you're not fighting over seats really. It's one of
Yeah.
those things where you can even now buy online and select your seats. So
Oh,
you can
yeah.
all,
That's
so
usually
you,
how I do it.
yeah. So then, like, let's say you want to go with a group, you make sure you can all sit together. So it definitely has its pros, and whatnot. And I think a lot of it, I think the bigger cons are aside from the fact that there's no lines and you lose the freedom of really where you want to sit is also the fact of the matter that, the only other con I can think of is if people become unruly or sometimes you have what's called double booking where sometimes they accidentally don't remove from the app the seats that you picked even though you
Oh,
bought
yeah.
the seats because it's a technical glitch and then they sell those seats to somebody else and now you're trying to figure out who's sitting where. It's
Oh,
rare. It's
absolutely.
extremely rare, but I've had that happen because I had somebody come up to me one time. I think I was watching John Wick. Was it 4 or 3? It was one of the John Wicks. I went to go watch, and somebody came up to us and said, "You're sitting in our seats." And I checked my ticket, and I said, "No, this is my seat." And we both had the exact same number.
That's crazy.
So what happened was I said, let me just talk to a manager. I said, let me see if I can just straighten this out. I said, I'm sympathetic to your cause. I'm not trying to cause any trouble. I said, I just want to figure this out, this to resolve peacefully. And the guy was really chill. He's like, yo, yeah, I understand. He goes, no worries. So I go out and I find a manager and I say, yo, we both have the same tickets. They came in and checked them. And he awarded us the seats because he saw the time on the receipt that they were purchased. And he gave that gentleman another row of seats that weren't taken, and he swapped them on his little machine thing,
Handheld thing,
his
yeah.
little handheld machine. He went in there and he swapped them, and he saw those three weren't taken, so he basically made it to where those three would go to them. So
I've never experienced that, but and I never even really considered movie theater glitches in that way.
yeah.
So that's pretty intense. That's pretty yeah,
Mhm.
if you get the wrong person upset about, a movie seat or whatever, that can
Mhm.
cause a fight for sure. So I'm glad that
Yeah.
it was handled properly.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't much older than me. It was he and his girlfriend. I'm guessing
Mm,
girlfriend. I don't know for
mm,
sure. If you're listening to this episode by chance, just know, hey, no hard feelings. But yeah, no, it's just one of those things where yeah, it can happen at times, and it's definitely something that I don't think a lot of people consider for understandable reasons, but
yeah.
it's one of those things that it's like it can happen. Even if it's
Well,
rare, it can happen.
we rely so much on technology, sometimes we can remember that it's at fault for a lot of mistakes that happen worldwide, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely, for sure.
But, we're talking about the experience. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the etiquette that one must have to have a good theater experience. Now,
Ah,
I'm sure a lot of you know basic theater etiquette,
let's
but
hope.
we're just
Let's
yeah,
hope.
let's hope. But we're just going to go over it anyway for those newcomers to not only the podcast but to the theater viewing experience. So, John, do you have any must-have etiquette rules that you abide by and you expect others to abide by?
The biggest one is no phones. I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah.
that's the biggest one for me.
Now, what
You
about the
know,
cell phone bothers you? Is it texting, calling? What is it?
it's mostly the light, I think, from the phone.
Mm,
It's distracting, number one. Number two, I'm going to the movie because I want to watch the movie, and like the person next to me is either texting or doing something. The thing is with smartphones now, it's a lot different from the flip phone era where, the first thing you were worried about was it going off in the phone, and you hear
mhm.
dee 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 dee, that's the last thing, whatnot. That's usually the kind of one of the things. Funny enough, I got a funny ad that I need to send to you that AMC put out in the early 2000s about ringtone in the theaters. I got to tell you this really quick. I'll make this as fast as I can, but there's this ad where it's almost like the Lion King, but it's eagles. And basically what happens is the funniest thing. Basically it's like for centuries her father ruled over this massive kingdom, and they're like bald eagles, and whatnot, and they're like, do you see this whole thing and whatnot, and et cetera, et cetera. And the next thing you know, this eagle, it's like it feels like it's an actual trailer for like a movie.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
basically what ends up happening is these eagles um are leading this whole group and whatnot. But then one day, a group of like, I think they're vultures, come in and try and invade the place. And then the father is fighting with one of them, and the vulture gets the better of the father eagle. And of all places they can be fighting is in front of a volcano. Let me say that again. They are fighting in front and on top of a volcano. He gets the better of the father, and the father eagle starts to fall toward the volcano. And at this point, the daughter eagle's gonna swoop in and try and save her dad and try and push him away. And at that moment, a cell phone ringer goes off, and the eagle looks and goes, "Oh, you got to be kidding me! Is that a cell phone?" And then 2 seconds later, they both collide and both hit the volcano.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love
And
breaking
then
the fourth wall.
Yeah, and then
Oh,
and then basically comes up and it's like, don't be that guy, just silence your phones. And then the eagle, the daughter eagle comes up and she like missing all her feathers, and then is like, I think grabs the phone and or aggressively shuts the phone, just having completely all of her feathers just completely, because cartoons, they're gonna survive.
you're gonna have to send that to me, and I'm gonna have to put it on the
Put
Instagram
it on the
because
Instagram,
I
please.
we
Put it on the
need to see
Instagram.
that. We need to see
Please put
that.
it on the Instagram. I can't remember. I think it's called Soar. It's AMC Theaters thing. I got to go back and find that. That was from like the early 2000s. I never saw it in person, but when I typed in "don't use your cell phone in the theaters," I got so many of those ads, and that was one of them. But it's so unique, and I just had to share that really quick. But I think phones is the biggest one because I think for one, I have a pet peeve, obviously, of like people not paying attention to a movie. Now, I know that should not be a concern of mine because people's opinions on movies are vastly different, and not everyone's gonna like the same type of movies. I understand that, but sometimes I'm just kind of like, you're here to, we're here to watch a movie. Like, why do you need to be on your phone and
100%.
whatnot? And especially when it's something like Star Wars. I had okay, so during Revenge of the Sith, the movie they brought back, I actually kind of got a little, and I apologize, but I got a little I don't want to say snippy, but kind of agitated at one of the people sitting next to me because she was taking videos of the film, because probably trying to say like, "Oh, I'm watching Revenge of the Sith again," that kind of thing. And the thing with smartphones now is you have the ability to turn your brightness down. So often what people will do now is even though they say don't use your phone, they turn their brightness all the way down so it's not as easily noticeable, and then they're still on their phones. And it's just like, what the heck? Like it's kind of like you're distracting it, you're ruining it for everybody else, and like, come on, you're here to watch a movie. Like, is the movie really that boring? Why did you buy a ticket for it?
No, for sure. I don't mind someone taking their phone out for a quick second to either check a text because
Sure,
I know emergencies
sure.
happen,
Oh yeah,
or to
absolutely.
snap a quick picture, or even get like 30 seconds of footage on their
Yeah.
Snapchat or Instagram. But
Hmm.
if it's constantly out, you're constantly checking it, it's constantly buzzing, or I see through the corner of my eye a little screen that's not bright but is still noticeable in my peripheral, I'm gonna get a little agitated.
Yeah.
I'm gonna admit it. I at
Same.
times, cough in a way like or uh, if you're really annoying, which I've had this happen multiple times, I will turn my head and say, "Can you please be quiet?"
Yeah.
And I hate to be that person. I really do, but I
I don't.
paid just as much as you did to come and enjoy the movie, except I'm enjoying it and you're not. So, you know.
Yeah. Have you ever had anyone that got unruly when you tried to do that, or have they all just immediately been quiet? Because I've had some incidences where people have kind of snapped back at me.
Okay, so I also hate to admit this, when I was like 12 or 13,
Yeah.
I would go with like groups of friends and we would
Hmm.
be really chatty, and sometimes people would be like, "Can you guys be quiet?" We would be little buttholes and, shush them back or make more noise, which I do not agree with now. But as a prepubescent child up until my teens, I
Sure.
just for some reason I did not mind agitating adults. But
Yeah.
now as an adult, thankfully, no one has done that to me to where they are, snippy back or they're angry or anything like that, thankfully.
Mhm.
But I also make sure to be as respectful as possible when I'm trying to give them the message of, "Hey, you're inconveniencing me by
Yeah.
doing this, or you're being inconsiderate right now."
Yeah.
It's all about how you say it too.
That is
um
true. That
and
is
that's something that
true.
I've learned too, so I try to do it in a very respectful manner, but for the most part no one has ever given me an issue.
Okay, and that's good. I've had a couple people who look at me kind of like, why do you care kind of attitude.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
I've
the
had,
face is sure.
yeah, I've had the face. There was one time a lady, um, we were actually getting out of the theater. We had just watched Ant-Man and the Wasp actually, and this
Ah, okay.
lady was talking with her boyfriend, and like midway through the
Ugh.
movie, I said, "Can you please be quiet? I'm trying to watch a movie." And when we got out of the theater, she got up, turned around, and looked at me, and she basically goes, "It's not my fault if you didn't it's not my fault if I didn't enjoy the movie enough to where it couldn't keep my interest, like you like and all that kind of thing." And she just kind of gave me that attitude, and I just said, "I just was wanting you to be quiet." I said, "Because we were trying to all watch the movie." I said, "I didn't mean any disrespect." And she goes, "No, you were disrespectful, like, it's a free country, I can do what I want," kind of thing. And then her boyfriend was actually trying to calm her down. She's like, he's like, "Hun, like, you, like, stop, stop, stop," and she went on, and I could tell that she probably runs things in the relationship. Because he was
Okay.
trying, and then he turned around, he goes, "Yo, I am so sorry." Like he was really cool. Like he was like, "Yo, I'm so sorry. I can't control her at times. You know, she's really out of whack." Like he's like, "I'm really sorry we inconvenienced you." I said, "I'm not mad at you." I said, I just wanted her to know where I was coming from because I get where you're coming from. He says, trust me. He says, I don't like it either. And he got up and he left, and he shook my hand, and just I think he was trying to be as cordial. I could tell he was embarrassed
Hmm.
heavily, and also I think, to be honest with you, I think she was drinking. Um
Yeah, that'll do
um,
it.
sometimes
That'll do it.
yeah, because and the reason I say that is because I noticed when she stood up, she kind of had that kind of, she wasn't like drunk, but that had that little bit of a wobbly kind of demeanor, and
Yes.
I think from what I could see a couple times, I saw her hand go up like this. Like sometimes what people will do is nowadays, because in most movie theaters they don't serve alcohol, people will sneak those little mini shooters in because they can put them in their pocket or purse easily.
Oh
And then
yeah.
like
Well,
right before the
yeah.
movie comes on, they shoot up real quick.
Well, let me reassure you that you can fit more than just a mini shooter in
Oh, I
your
believe
purse.
it. I
So,
believe it. I mean,
that's the least of our
we were just
problems,
talking
really.
about this too, actually,
Yeah,
funny
yeah.
enough.
How
Um,
funny.
but yeah, but
Um,
what really quick, is there any other etiquette? Because that's the main one that gets me. Other than that, I'm not terribly picky.
okay, so I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of my rules that
Hmm.
now I follow, which as a kid, I
Sure.
didn't really follow these because you're a freaking kid,
I mean, I
what do
didn't
you know,
either. Let's be
right?
real.
But no talking during the movie.
Yeah.
One of my biggest pet peeves, especially if I'm the one bringing you to the movie, is if every
Yep.
5 minutes you ask me what's going on, who's the villain, who's
Watch
this.
the
I'm
damn
like,
movie.
watch or what's gonna happen? Oh, guess what? This is my first time seeing it too, you dingus. But yeah, I really hate it when people talk to me in movies. Don't use your cell phone like John was saying. That's just completely rude unless it's
Mhm.
in emergency or unless you know for a fact it's not in anyone's line of sight. Like, say if you're in the farthest back and
Mhm.
there's no one sitting next to you, okay, whatever. Just don't be a distraction and don't be a disruption either. Or like, don't be disruptive in any way.
Yeah.
Those are just basic.
Oh,
Be
absolutely.
respectful and considerate of those around you. And by that, I mean, if someone's trying to scoot by you to get to their seat, don't be a butthole and put your feet up and make it difficult for them to get by, or don't try to trip
Mm-mm.
them or kick them or throw popcorn
Just
at
let them
people.
pass, because you're gonna
Exactly.
probably have to do it eventually as well. I'm gonna be serious about this. If anybody knows why people are going so crazy over the chicken jockey, I never really played Minecraft. Please
Let
let
us
us
know.
know. I,
Yeah,
I'm
why? Why are you
I'm
guys going
s-
crazy?
I'm seriously curious about this. I know me and Ramona are both millennials. I mean, I'm on the cusp because I was born in '97, so I'm probably more of a Gen Zer. But still, like, let us know. Like, I'm confused. I am all ears if you want to tell me why that is. Please
I've
give
never
us an
played
email or something.
Minecraft, but yeah, give us a Minecraft for dummies, just
Yeah.
let us know because we can't wrap our heads around why it's happening.
Yeah, because even when I Google it, it's just like, yeah, people are doing this. It's like, why though? Like, I can't even get a
Why?
why out of Google.
Exactly.
And
For no talking in the theater, that's a big
yes,
no-no. We went over cell phones because that's completely rude for
yes,
the
no
most part.
phones.
Be respectful because everyone's going through something. You don't know what people are going through. Also, make sure to be on time. There's
Yes.
nothing more. And especially since we have assigned seatings now, there's really no reason for you to be late because
Oh
you
my
could buy your
gosh.
tickets online. I don't understand when it's 15, 20 minutes into the movie and I see a family of five come in
Oh,
or a
I hate
couple or
that.
one person. I mean, sure, you know, if they're late, it's probably because of a good reason, whatever. But I just I love movies so much that I can't even miss the trailers or else I'd feel like I missed the entire experience and just rebuy
Yeah.
another ticket and go see it another time. I can't imagine missing the first 10 to 15 minutes of a movie.
Oh yeah. I got a story about that, but I'm going to save that for a little bit later, actually.
Yeah, yeah, please do.
Because we're going to talk about that when we get into our discussion prompt of movies you just
Mhm.
had to see in the theaters. So,
And then my last two rules
yes.
actually,
Let's hear it.
and this is post 2010-ish.
Sure.
Honor the seat assignments. If I paid for
Yes.
A1, I'm going to be sitting in A1. I don't care if that's your favorite seat. Or I don't care if you like to recline on A1 because of the bar. I bought it. It's mine.
The
Honor
only
that.
the only way I'm gonna make that accommodation is if it's something like serious, like if it's somebody with a disability or somebody, who might be in a wheelchair or something like that, or something where it's actually more beneficial for them, or it's gonna help them. Then yes, or somebody who's elderly, of course I'm gonna make that accommodation.
I see.
But if it's just, hey, you bought the seat, and just because you want to sit there and be an a-hole, like, no, I'm not going to just give you that seat. I paid for that seat. Like,
Yep.
go sit where you're supposed to sit. Like, I get it. Like, everybody wants to have a good seating, like a good look, but at the same time, it's like, come on, you paid for your seat. Just go sit where you're going to sit. You're going to still see the same movie. It's not going to be any
Hmm.
different. We're
Yep.
watching the
Yep.
same thing. I know you might be seeing a bit of the side, but actually, I've never really had a problem with where I sit in the theater. Sure, excuse me. In the middle, of course, you're gonna get the best sound and the best picture, but really, it's the
Yeah.
same where you sit. Like,
Yeah.
I've never noticed a big difference in that. So
Yeah.
yeah, guys, just honor your seating assignments.
Yeah, yeah. There have been times, even prior to assigned seating, where I will give my seat because it makes sense. So this
Yeah,
was, like I said, prior to where you had to wait
yeah,
in line and then rush to find any seat
hmm
that was available. I didn't mind moving, like, say if I found a seat and a mom, and there was like one seat left on my left, and like say a mom wanted to sit there, but her like 4-year-old child had to sit like on the other side of the theater, then I would switch with that kid or the mom so that they can sit together,
Oh,
you
same. Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
I'm not
That's another
heartless
one.
in that way,
No,
but,
absolutely
like,
not.
in a situation like that, I would gladly give up my seat,
Yeah,
um, but anyway, and then here are some 3 unspoken rules. I mean, technically all of these are unspoken, but these are a
mhm,
little bit more, in depth as to specific experiences that I've had,
sure.
and let me know if you can relate to this as well. Sitting next to someone when there are available seats,
Yep.
that gets me.
Oh yeah,
One time, a theater was almost completely empty, and
yeah.
I sat on the edge of the row I,
Okay,
and of course, someone sat next to me, like a
okay.
chair away, and I'm thinking, "You have 300 plus seats to choose. I bought this one yesterday. You
Yeah.
probably bought yours today." And because when I bought it, it there were no seats next to me purchased, so it
Okay.
had to have been in the theater. Don't buy the seat next to me. I assume that's the same etiquette as, like, urinal etiquette for men in the bathroom, You always leave a space in between, You never go right next to someone, especially if
I
there's,
mean, I mean,
you
now you
know
got partitions between them, so it doesn't really
Yeah, that's
matter.
fair.
But
Now, yeah, yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I
Not like
get
I
what you're
would know.
saying. Yeah. I mean, hey, I'm just speaking from what I know. That's all I'm
Yeah, no,
saying.
exactly,
But
exactly.
basically, no, I hear you on that one. I wonder if sometimes maybe it's because like there are some people in this world I feel like that long for, I don't want to say companionship, but they just kind of like, it's kind of like, yeah, the theater's empty, but maybe they have like, and again, I'm not saying that this is an excuse or trying to
Yeah.
justify it in any way, but like, I wonder if there's just some people who are just like, yeah, like the theater's almost empty. It's gonna feel weird if like somebody's up here and I'm all the way over here and whatnot, and they're kind of
Yeah.
like, I wanna feel social without being social, if that makes sense. And
Huh,
I wonder
yeah.
if sometimes people have that mindset and they're like, hey, I'm not gonna bother you, but like I just don't want to really sit alone, but I don't also want to impede on your privacy either. And
Yeah.
so that happens. Again, I'm not saying that that's always the case. I definitely think there are some people that are just weird like that.
Yeah.
But I wonder if maybe in a few cases that could be one of the thoughts or answers on that.
Huh, interesting.
That's just a thought, but
I
again,
guess I'll have a little bit more empathy for people who are
but
like that.
But no, I understand the peeve because it's kind of like, yes, you do have an entire theater, and if it's kind of like we can both have our privacy, we can be more free actually if
Yeah.
that's the case. It's like if you're sitting way over there, I'm sitting up here, I don't have to worry about whispering as much because you're not going to hear me talking from all the way up there if it's just a
No,
few
yeah,
people.
exactly,
It's not
exactly.
like if it's a theater and there's people behind you whisper. If you're whispering, I don't have a problem because sometimes if you do, like, hey, like my Johnny, I need to change Johnny's diaper. hand me the diapers. Yeah, okay, okay, okay. That I don't mind because I'm like, okay, you got to talk about that. But like when it's like, what do you think's gonna happen? Oh, this and this. Shut up.
Now, what would you rather have? Say you have a friend, two friends.
Okay.
You're not with them though. They're sitting sort of close to you,
Okay.
and one of them went to the bathroom
Yeah.
and missed 10 to 15 minutes, and they ask what happened. And the other friend, happily obliges and tells them. Would you rather them whisper it or a soft spoken, like, yeah, so this happened, blah, blah, so where you can still hear it around you? Or would you rather them text it to them with low
I
brightness?
I'd rather you just wait until the movie's done. That's your fault for missing
Nope,
that.
you only have those two options. What would you
What?
prefer? Yep, you only have those two
That,
options.
okay,
They're
that's
very stubborn friends. They're very stubborn friends.
me personally. I already told you what I would do, but if I had to answer for one of those two, shoot, I guess whisper.
Whisper. Okay. So you really hate cell phones then in the movie theater setting.
Why would you have a cell phone in the movie theater? You're there to watch a
uh, I
movie.
have to check my stocks.
I
No,
don't
I'm
give a
kidding.
crap about your
I'm kidding.
stocks.
Okay,
I'm just playing.
another
I'm playing. I'm playing.
unspoken rule that I
Yes.
frickin' hate.
Yes.
Don't hog both of the armchairs if you're sitting next to somebody. Have
Oh,
one.
yes.
Take one and give me the other.
Yep.
And that's it. Don't take both of them.
I agree. I 100% agree on that one. It's kind of like if you got
Yeah.
the one, just use the one. Like you don't need to,
Yeah.
for sure.
Exactly.
And one another one I think I can think of for etiquette actually. You said a lot of the ones I was gonna say, so
Cool.
those have been spoken for. But the other one I'm gonna say too is in an era where movie franchises are becoming so huge to where sometimes they start concluding, or sometimes it's been something that hasn't been around for a while or something that people have been waiting a long time to see. Oftentimes, people, the first thing you want to do when you finish the movie is talk about it and whatnot. But there was a time when I was going to watch, believe it or not, Avengers Infinity War. And I
Okay.
walk out and somebody next to me goes, "Bro, that was crazy. Everybody dies."
Oh man.
And that's what I hear next to me. And of course, I'm not saying spoiler warning. That movie's been out for a long time. It's a cultural
Yeah.
phenomenon. If you don't know what that is, that's your fault.
Yeah.
But
Well, 2018 was what?
like
Like eight
almost
years
like
ago?
8 years. That's
7 years
wild.
ago? Yeah.
That's wild that's like seven,
Yeah.
8 years ago. That's
Yeah.
crazy. But I
Yeah.
remember somebody did that. So another one I say is if it's a big movie like that, maybe think, obviously, I know like spoilers is kind of a touchy subject because of the fact that it's not something that's regulated, obviously. But one rule I'd put is just wait till you get to the parking lot or in your car because there's sometimes people going in to watch that movie as you're going out and
Oh
they
yeah.
and they and they want to experience it the way it's meant to be experienced. So that's one thing that's also a pet peeve of mine is when people come out and the next thing you know they're just talking spoilers the whole time. Like I get it, you just watched the movie, you want to talk about it. I'm not crapping on that, but I'm not clowning on you, but like just wait until you get outside or at least into the parking lot, where you're more
Yeah.
spread out and then you can talk about it. But we've actually had people at Harkins up here say that. I remember when Force Awakens came out, they said there have been people waiting over 30 something years for this Star Wars for this film. So please don't give any spoilers until you're out of our vicinity. So
Yeah. No, for
I think
sure.
it's more
For
just a
sure.
respect thing. It's not something that I think should be implemented, but I think it's just something you should consider.
Yeah, and all of these, like I said, are unspoken rules that
Yep.
we abide by. It's not to say that if you don't follow each and every one of these rules to a T, we're not going to like you or
I
whatever,
won't.
but these are just okay, half of us will like you, half of Rewind Room will like you. But it's just something to consider because at the end of the day, it's a communal experience
Yes.
that can be, made or broken by, certain people's lack of consideration. So that's just something to keep in mind whenever you're going to the movie theater, exactly how you're affecting others and potentially how to not be a nuisance.
Yeah, pretty much.
But that leads us to another topic. And you mentioned it perfectly: big franchises, big names,
Yep.
big premiere nights. And the franchises that we're going to be talking about and giving some general context are some of the biggest franchises in the world
Oh
that
yes.
came out in the 2000s to 2010.
Yep.
And why those times specifically? Because that's what we grew up on and that's what we remember the most.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy to think that we had so many franchises come out when we were kids, and a lot of those were, based on books. They were based on comic books. And often I did mention later in the intro that, a lot of films coming out today are based on pre-existing formulas and such. I guess you could argue that with some of these too, but the reason I don't is because a lot of these were adaptations. A
Mm,
lot of them were the first time that these were being adapted. So, for franchise films like that, you have like Harry Potter, which were based on the books by J.K. Rowling. You have The Lord of the Rings, which were based on the books by J.R.R. Tolkien. You had Spider-Man, which was based on a comic book by Marvel. And you had, of course, Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, which was based on a DC comic. And, you had a lot of these adaptations because these were the first time that we were actually seeing some of these franchises come to life. And it's wild to think that the majority of these are some of the best-selling franchises of all time now. And
yeah.
when you look at the rise of franchise films, I think it really kind of kicked off. I don't know if you can think of one before this, but I think really Harry Potter kind of kicked it off because Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone came out in 2001. And I remember when those movies were coming out, those were big events.
Yeah.
I mean, theaters were blocking off like 4 to 5 theaters just to show those just that one film.
And the
Um,
nice thing about these franchises, I don't know if you remember, but
yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
this specifically, and I also remember hearing about it and seeing it on nostalgic YouTube and whatnot. People would dress up. People
Oh
would bring
yeah.
in props. People would, wait in like a 5 hour line in their entire costume,
Hmm.
standing, getting sweaty just to go see a movie.
You
And you'd
know,
see that. You'd see that for Star Wars, for Harry
mhm,
Potter, and for Lord of the Rings.
exactly. And another one. Okay, you did it again. You didn't correct me, but you made me think of another franchise actually that actually did predate Harry Potter. The Star Wars prequels.
Oh, yeah, that was 99.
Phantom Menace came out in 99 and there's video footage of that actually. Thank you. You actually made me remember when you mentioned dressing up because if you want a franchise that everybody dresses up for, look no further than Star Wars.
Look it up on YouTube. I actually just
Yes.
watched this not too long ago. The night of the premiere, Phantom Menace,
Yes.
1999.
It's
People were
wild.
dressed to the nines. People were doing lightsaber fights in the theater.
Oh
It was
yeah.
crazy, people. Check that out. If not, I'll put
Hmm.
little snippets on Instagram just so that
Well,
you guys can
did you
live that moment vicariously through the video.
Did you see the video where I don't know the location, but the theater opened its door for the midnight release, and the first person in line, when he gave the guy his ticket to check it, he went down and he kissed the floor.
Yep, and then he jumped up and ran to the
He
door
jumped up and
because he
ran
knew.
and he
He
booked it.
knew.
He booked
Yep.
it. Yeah,
Yep. We
because
watched the same video. Yeah.
okay, yeah, that was insane. And then the second they show snippets from the originals, like the ending of because I don't know how they did it, but I think they did like a brief recap of all three originals before episode one started. Now I know that there were some venues that
Okay.
actually showed all three trilogy films during the afternoon showing, and then at midnight, Phantom Menace came out.
That is
And
so back when a midnight premiere was exactly that, a midnight premiere.
it was, and then there's the video when it goes a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Everybody gets quiet, and then the next thing, bum, 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 bum,
Everyone
bum. Everyone
Oh
went
yeah. Oh
crazy.
yeah. We're going to talk about this a little bit later
Oh,
too,
we
but
will, we
almost
will.
the same feeling was during The Force Awakens. And
Oh
that's
yes,
2015. So that's what, 16 years apart
yeah, it
from Phantom
was.
Menace? That's
Yeah, yeah.
crazy.
Exactly. And Phantom Menace really, I mean, that was where the toy lines kicked off. That's where a lot of those
Mhm.
happened. So I do apologize for mentioning Harry Potter was the first. I think Harry Potter was the second, but I think Star Wars is the one that really kicked off that whole trend of where you're really dressing up to go to the movies because even in the
Yeah.
80s, people were dressing up like the characters. My dad even mentioned one time that there were young girls who were doing their hair up like Princess Leia from the first film when they would go
Oh,
watch
yeah.
Empire and Return of the Jedi, you know?
I've seen people make their own costumes, like posts of someone from like 77 right after watching A
Hmm.
New Hope. They go directly to making a costume and then going to see the movie another 5 times.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, Jaws is where the blockbuster started, but
Yeah.
Star Wars is where it found its ground, I feel like.
Now, I'm glad you said that. So, to give a little bit of context for each of these movies and
Hmm.
really how they impacted the theater experience, I just want to talk a little bit about
Of course.
each. For context, Star Wars started in 1977
Yep.
and is continuing on even today.
Hmm.
George Lucas's Star Wars debuted in 1977. As I just said, it's a space opera rooted in mythic storytelling,
Hmm.
groundbreaking special effects, revolutionized the blockbuster model, and pioneered modern merchandising
Yep.
and cinematic universes. So you can thank Star Wars for basically all of the cinematic universes that we have today. The
Exactly.
franchise, the impact, it established the modern franchise blueprint. Sequels, prequels, spin offs, and transmedia storytelling, such as films, books, comics, and video games.
I think what made Star Wars so unique too is while so many of these other models go in chronological order, George Lucas purposefully made Star Wars out of order.
Oh,
And I
absolutely.
thought that was clever as well because, you go from A New Hope, which everyone thinks is episode one, then in 1980, everyone sees episode five and they're going, "What? Did we
Yep.
miss something?"
Yep.
And then
Exactly.
George Lucas had to go forward and said, "No, I'm purposefully making these movies out of order."
Well, he started off with Star Wars in 1977, and
Yes.
then once he came out with Empire Strikes Back, he's like, you know what, actually? I'm going to call Star Wars A New Hope because then that makes sense for 4,
Yes.
5, and 6. And then he just
Mhm.
kept on confusing people. And then once the prequels came out, oh my gosh,
Then
that was
people
so
were
confusing too.
It was. And the thing with Star Wars is it gives something for every generation. And I think that's what made Star Wars so successful.
That's a beautiful
Because
point.
because if you look at it, like our parents grew up when the originals were coming out. So they
Oh yeah.
obviously that's how they introduced us to Star Wars. And then the
hmm
prequels came out when we were kids. And now
Yep.
some of my friends who have kids of their own now have the sequels. Well, I guess we can call them sequels.
Yeah.
Um, um, they have those, and then everything that Disney's putting out now. And I
Yeah.
mean,
The spin-off shows, all of
I
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I got my opinions on it, but I still think it's cool that Star Wars is there for almost every generation. I think that's why it's so big
Yeah.
because unlike so many other franchises, it's a generational thing. So many other
Yeah.
franchises were catered toward a certain area, and now when people discover them, they're like, "Wow, you guys had that really cool." But for Star Wars fans, it's
Yeah.
like, "Wow, you guys might have had this, but we got to experience some of that fun too."
Yeah, and it's also diverse too in the type of media that you can take in. Okay, you're not a fan of sitting through 2 hours of a movie. Okay, you can read the books. Okay, you're not a fan of reading books. You can play the video games. Okay, you're not a fan of that. You can read the comics. There's something for literally
Yeah,
everyone.
exactly. And I think that's what's so beautiful about all of that. But, Phantom Menace kicked that off, but really, I think Harry Potter continued that because I remember when
Yeah.
Harry Potter was coming out, the first book I think came out and I believe it was 97. So the book
Okay.
actually predated the prequels. And like the books, the thing with those books is those were what were getting children to read again.
Okay,
And
I can
that's
see
when
that.
children's reading really picked up because I don't know if you knew this or not. Children's reading in the 90s was kind of at a decline a bit because
Really? Okay.
now you have so many forms of media and such. Most kids were playing video games, watching movies, all that kind of stuff, which
Oh
obviously,
yeah.
hey, I love it as well. But, people weren't really reading and reading scores were going down. The teachers were trying to find ways. And then Harry Potter hits the shelves, and these are big books. Like I'm
Oh
talking
yeah.
like big books. Like they're huge. And here's kids waiting and begging to get their hands on the next Harry Potter book. And then
Oh
they
yeah.
announce a movie series is coming, and now everyone, oh my God, we've got movies now. And the most interesting part I think about it were the movies were coming out at the same time the books were. So you,
Yep,
you were able to
exactly.
follow it
In real
in
time,
real
pretty
time.
much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now people are like, well, I watched the movie and such. I need to know what happens. Wait, I can learn a little bit earlier because I can read the book.
Yep. And
and
I mean
find out what
the
happens.
the franchise it set a new standard for literary adaptations, you know, long form storytelling, influencing studios they basically influenced them to do multi-film sagas and created a global fan base
Hmm.
that fueled spin-offs such as Fantastic Beasts and
Hmm.
even more so now the new HBO series that's to come out soon.
Yep,
It's the ripple effect of a genuinely good idea, and you
absolutely.
see that with Star Wars. You've seen that with Harry Potter. We're going to see that right now with Lord of the Rings, and
Oh yes.
two extra special ones too that I've added also. Um, that they go very overlooked. They're very overlooked on how they impact it. But
Yeah.
we're gonna go over that right now. But let's talk Lord of the Rings a little
Oh
bit.
my gosh. Lord of the Rings was one that I got into later on in my life
Mm.
because obviously, I think as many people know, Lord of the Rings is a little bit darker in tone compared to Harry Potter.
Oh yeah.
But what was interesting was those two were coming out side by side and they kicked off the whole fantasy craze from the whole
Hmm.
early 2000s because I mean, you have Harry Potter that comes first. And then Peter Jackson starts talking about adapting J.R.R. Tolkien's novel. And the thing that was interesting, I think, and I don't know if you knew this, people were looking at him like, Peter, you're crazy. You know,
Absolutely. Well, they already had the cartoon adaptation. They're
they
like,
had the
what,
cartoon.
what do you mean we're gonna get a live action?
Well, funny enough, I don't know if you knew this or not, but before New Line Cinema stepped in, the same studio that created the Nightmare on Elm Street series,
The
um,
house that Freddy
the
built.
house that Freddy built, or else I guess you could also call it the house that Frodo built. If you really want, if that's your thing, I still say house that Freddy built because you would not have New Line Cinema without Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm gonna say that right now. I mean, I know they go back for many, many years, but still, I think a lot
Yeah.
of it is just one of those. But Lord of the Rings holds a very special place in that history because I mean, before that, so many other studios were turning down Jackson's offer, and Jackson had just come off of directing a bunch of B horror movies, if you call them. He had one called Bad Taste, which he did in his native
Oh, yeah.
country of New England. His most famous, which is probably one of my favorite zombie movies, which is known as Dead Alive here in the United States, or if you live abroad, you might know it as Brain Dead.
I have to
It's
watch that. I've never seen it.
I can't believe you've never seen that. It's
I know I'm
amazing.
kicking
And
myself.
and if you guys go on our Instagram, we actually uploaded a brief promo for Dead Alive,
Hmm.
which had the candy dispenser in it. So if you guys want to know what that is, go check out our Instagram because it's up there.
Yeah.
But he did those, and then he did a drama that kind of got him to where it's like, okay, we can trust you with this. But when he announced that he wanted to adapt Lord of the Rings, everyone was looking at him like, you're crazy because of all the amount of technology that be needed. Because some of those things that are described in Lord of the Rings, you can't get from practical, unfortunately,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
Tolkien really went into his imagination and created things that you just can't capture practically. And people were going, how are you going to film this? And Jackson was the one of the first directors who started to use visual effects heavily. And I mean, George Lucas was already kind of doing that with Star Wars, of course, but Jackson took it to a whole nother level with the Lord of the Rings films. I mean, he could have entire armies of thousands of people, and he just digitally added each of them.
Yeah.
And instead of having to hire 1,000 extras, I mean, he did hire hundreds upon hundreds of extras. Don't get me wrong, because he wanted as many practical as he could. But getting off of that, basically, when Lord of the Rings did hit theaters, it was massive.
Oh yeah.
Um, and from what I saw of when those movies were coming out, they were really taking the box office by storm, and really they kind of
Yeah.
brought back the concept of, and I'm sure you know of this concept, the movie epic.
Oh,
Um,
completely. And world building and all of that. Yeah.
yeah,
It legitimized fantasy for the blockbuster genre.
it did. And the thing is, and also when I say movie epic is back in the early days, there were movies known as either epics or roadshow films. And those were movies like Ben-Hur, Lawrence of Arabia,
Yeah.
Dr. Zhivago. And basically, those are movies that they had a long run time and they
Hmm.
often had like an overture and an intermission. Now, while none of the Lord of the Rings movies had intermissions, it had that same feel of that kind of a film because they
Hmm.
had that big scope. And it got audiences to sit through 3.5 hours of each film, so
Yeah, yeah,
it's
and that's with the
impressive.
extended cuts too. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine. I haven't still haven't finished the extended cuts.
Well, that's the thing. They created something so mind-bending and beautiful and revolutionary for what was it, 2001
Yeah.
to 2003 that it only makes sense.
For sure, absolutely. And the thing with Lord of the Rings, I think that it did was, it really revolutionized the concept that really any movie can have a chance as long as the filmmakers are willing to give into the heart of the story and respect its source material, which Jackson
Absolutely.
absolutely nailed.
Almost to a
And
T, yeah.
almost to a T. And I'll say the same even with the adaptations of the Harry Potter stories. Now, I know a lot of them
Mhm.
took deviations from the books, obviously. I mean, you have to, it's a movie. But I still think they're great. I know if I'm from what I've understood about the Harry Potter movies, I'm just gonna say this real quick. They are not canon to the actual Harry Potter lore though, which I find interesting. I don't know if you
No,
knew that.
yeah, I know that when it comes to the books, people have a lot to say about how J.K. Rowling basically allowed for the interpretation of her characters because she is a controversial figure and
Yeah.
she created a a story that in some eyes were also controversial.
Mhm.
So, walking the fine line of making it true to the story, but also including a more diverse cast and also important plot points, I
Yeah.
think it at the end of the day, the director's edit and the director's cut was is my favorite interpretation of what Harry Potter is, and
Absolutely.
that is a lot of times people who are really big fans will call me a flake or will call me a fake friend a fake what am I trying to say, a fake fan.
Sure.
And I don't really care. I like the movies. I like them. I don't care if it's
Mhm.
not 100% to the book. That's fine.
No, absolutely. I'm the same with you, and I never expected any of them. I mean, Lord of the Rings takes its differences from Tolkien's book as well. I mean, they got rid of characters. I mean, Tom Bombadil's a big one they got rid of, obviously. But I can understand too. I mean, a movie you can only tell so much. If you were to tell the most accurate adaptation of J.R. Tolkien's novel, you're gonna end up with like a 20-hour long movie. You know,
You're gonna end up with a Game of Thrones too.
Basically, yeah. I mean, you'll have to break it into a series, basically,
Yeah.
and whatnot. A couple of the other franchise films, that I think were big were the superhero, because that's when superhero films really started kicking off too.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, a couple of our favorites are, of course, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man
Yeah, Iron
series.
Man.
Iron Man, of course, kicked off in that time. Batman was reinvented by Christopher Nolan.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that was huge too, because a lot of people look at Christopher Nolan, and when you look at a lot of his early work, you kind of are almost like, really, this is the guy who's going to reinvent Batman?
Batman? No,
When
exactly,
you watch movies
exactly.
like Memento or Insomnia
Or
or
Inception.
some of his older works, yeah, Inception, you're kind of like, you're kind of looking at it like this is the guy that's going to recreate Batman. Then all of a sudden, right after Insomnia, here's Batman Begins, and you're like, my gosh, this movie's awesome. And
No,
then you have
absolutely.
Dark Knight, which is one of the greatest superhero movies of all time, if not the best.
Yeah.
And then you have Rises, which concluded the whole thing, so wonderfully. And to have those experiences were just something different altogether. It seems like the people who were making them were trying their hardest, even if they had to make changes, to honor and respect the source material that they were adapting, and they wanted it to be something special. It wasn't just something they wanted to cash grab. They're like, if we're gonna make the big bucks, it has to be good.
Now, on the note of adaptation, I want to talk about a little bit about Pirates of the Caribbean because that was
Yes.
loosely
Yes.
adapted from the Disney ride. It wasn't
It
even a
was.
book. It wasn't a movie prior. It wasn't
No.
anything really. It was a ride made a movie, and that's not really
Yeah.
something that you hear about.
Well, Pirates of the Caribbean was actually where that was my first PG-13 rated movie I watched. Curse of the
Really?
Black Pearl,
Okay.
yes. Curse of the
2003, yeah.
Yeah, that was like the first one I watched before Spider-Man, before any of them. Pirates of the Caribbean was the first one. I mean, because it always aired on Disney Channel because it's a Disney movie.
Wait. You're telling me you didn't see Sam Raimi's Spider-Man in the theater? Because that came
No,
out in 2002.
I thought I told you this.
No, you didn't tell me. That's crazy. My
No.
mind's blown.
Okay, I didn't
Whoa.
see really any of the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans in theater. I watched them mostly when they came out.
Whoa. Okay, yeah, that's a core memory of mine.
Yeah,
Whoa.
I did. Now, Pirates of the Caribbean, I saw at World's End when that came out.
Yeah, okay.
I did.
Well, you said you also saw Black Pearl too, so that's one of the best ones in my
Well,
opinion.
Black Pearl, I saw
Or
when.
Curse of the Black Pearl, sorry.
So ABC actually aired Curse of the Black Pearl right after Johnny Depp got his Oscar nomination for that film.
Oh, so you didn't see that in the theater then?
No, no. Okay. Let me
Oh,
clarify. A lot of these movies I didn't see in the theater because my folks, when I was young, were very specific on what they would allow me to watch in theater specifically.
oh, okay, okay.
And such. A lot of those movies I missed out on. But the thing is, and I know probably a lot of you are now thinking, how are you able to speak on the subject? Well, because when I would go to the movies, and yes, there were some of these movies I did see, I had the culture of it around me, if you know what I mean.
Okay, yeah, 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 for sure.
I apologize if some of you got the wrong idea. I'm not trying to lie or to mislead anyone. Yeah, some of these I did not get to see in theaters, unfortunately. But I know of it because of the culture that was around it, and I had lots of friends that saw them as well.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. That makes more sense
Okay,
then. Okay.
yes, and I apologize to everyone out there listening if they got that idea as well. I just want to make sure I clear the air.
But going back on
Yes,
Pirates, I it went from the franchise went from 2003 to 2017, and these are this franchise specifically. Um, I would say it goes up to the third movie, and then everything after that doesn't exist in my book.
sure,
Just because of budgeting
hmm,
and casting and also
sure.
awful CGI.
Mm,
But the rest of the franchises that we went over, Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, for the most part, every film, besides the Star Wars sequels, I'm gonna say, because I hate those.
yeah,
Besides that, well, I hate the ones that I saw. But besides that, I would say most of those franchises, if not all of the franchises that we named, every single movie slapped.
they did.
Every single Lord of the Rings movie is amazing.
Oh
Every
yeah,
single Harry Potter movie is amazing.
yes,
And every single Star Wars movie from 1 to 7 is amazing.
yes, absolutely, I agree.
Well, actually no, 1 to 6 because I did not like Force Awakens.
Which is
Um,
interesting. We're gonna have to talk about that because actually that's the
yeah.
one I like the most out of the sequels.
Oh,
Um,
well, I've only seen that one and Rogue One, so I can't even really talk about the latter half of the sequels.
okay,
Um,
we'll get there though. We'll get there
But a
for
teeny
sure.
bopper that I wanted to give an honorable mention to was the Twilight franchise
Oh
because
no.
no one knew about how big this would be. Really, when Stephanie Meyer or Mayer's books came out, no one knew how big of a cultural phenomenon the Twilight saga would be for young adults and like middle-aged women. No one knew. No one saw it coming. It catalyzed the young adult adaptation boom, which also led to movies that we love, like The Hunger Games and Divergence. You know,
Mhm.
we started seeing more representation on teen life and also more representation for female audiences as well. You
Sure.
know, we have a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of action and this and that for the more male oriented audiences. It made sense that, you know, in 2000 what 8 when Twilight came out, there would be
Hmm.
something for the ladies. So that was something that was really big back in the day.
Yeah, I could never get into Twilight. Unfortunately, you'll never get me to talk about Twilight, so I'll leave that to you, my friend.
Well,
Um,
thankfully, for you, that's all I had to say about Twilight.
okay, cool. For sure. I will say out of those though, Hunger Games I feel did it the best. Divergent, I feel like by that point the subgenre have kind of been exhausted, so people weren't as excited to see the Divergent films.
No,
I mean,
yeah, or like
people
the Maze Runner or
yeah,
whatever other movies
exactly.
came out at that time.
Because and they did that one on. The one thing I will say about Twilight is I don't think Breaking Dawn needed to be split into two movies. And the same with
Have you seen Breaking Dawn?
I've seen a little bit of it, and I have read up on it. And the thing that gets me is, you know, I get at that point a lot of franchises because Mockingjay did the same thing. I think the last Maze Runner or one of those did it as well, is because of the success that Harry Potter had when they split Deathly Hallows into two films.
I see.
And
Okay.
Deathly Hallows makes sense to split into two films because both of them run over 2 hours, which means you would have had a 4.5 hour long movie if you
Mm,
kept both Deadly Hallows together. I feel like with Breaking Dawn Part 1 being about an hour and a half and the second one being just 2 hours, you could have easily made that a 2.5 hour long, 2:45 long film.
yes, but
Um,
it's about the money.
yeah,
The money.
and the thing I realize is that because of how profitable Harry Potter was with that move, all other franchises were trying to do that to cash in on that as
Oh,
well.
well, Twilight was extremely not only popular but profitable, so it only makes sense that,
Mhm.
they tried to milk it as much as they could.
For sure. And I think despite all the haters that Twilight had, it still has a very dedicated fan base. And the thing is, Twilight is aimed more at a female audience for sure. Because I
Exactly.
noticed that the majority of people who turn up for those were female, and a lot of times male didn't care for it. And also the other thing too is I think Twilight's a romance story, and
Oh
obviously
yeah.
people I think are gonna find it weird. I will say the movies, I don't think the adaptations were done well, in my opinion.
Well, let's
Um,
be honest. How and I didn't read anything past the first book because that's what everyone talked about in seventh
mhm.
grade at the time. But how well written were those books? Like
I mean,
you have to see the source first, and
yeah,
we don't
exactly.
really know about that.
Yeah, for sure. And I know Robert Pattinson even clowns
Oh,
on
he
Twilight,
hated Twilight. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and he mostly did
Yeah.
it just because he needed the money, and obviously
Yeah.
that turned him into the
The
name
success
that
story
he's
that he is
known.
now.
Yeah, and whatnot. I've never been a Kirsten Stewart fan. I mean,
Mm.
just movies in general. I don't hate her or anything.
No, yeah.
I think she's a great actress. She's just not my cup of tea personally.
I think she's an awful actress, but I actually did not mind her in Zathura. I
Okay.
love the movie Zathura.
Only movie I think I liked her in was a movie with Dakota Fanning called The Runaways, based on the '70s band.
Oh, that is so sick. I'll
She
have to
plays
watch. I'll
Joan.
ask
She
that on.
plays Joan Jett, so that's the
No
reason.
way. I'll have to add that to my list
Yeah,
then.
she plays Joan Jett, and then Dakota Fanning plays Cherry Curry, the lead singer of The Runaways.
I love Dakota Fanning. She's great. She's
Oh,
great. But she's actually
absolutely.
also in the Twilight series too. That's really
She
funny.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
Dakota Fanning, I absolutely think is a great actress, and her
She's
sister Elle
fantastic.
Fanning's amazing as well.
I don't think I've seen Elle Fanning in anything, but was she in the Cinderella movie? No, I could be
No,
wrong.
that was Lily. What's her name? I'm trying to remember her last name.
Was
I
that
know.
Lily
I
Depp or something?
Lily James,
No.
something like that. I can't remember her
Yeah.
name off the top of my head. I know exactly what
No.
you're talking about, but
Yeah.
no, Dakota Elle Fanning was not. I don't believe, unless she was a side character. But from what
I
I know,
don't
I don't believe so.
I don't think I've seen anything with Elle Fanning in it then.
Interesting. Okay. There's a lot of great stuff that
Gotcha,
she's been.
gotcha.
She's kind of actually taking more of the mainstream now than Dakota, which I find funny.
Yeah.
Because well, Dakota was very popular when she was young. Now it's kind of like Elle's coming up in this whole new realm of things and whatnot. And so now she's kind of getting some of the glory, but Dakota's still out there, still acting. I mean, one of her more recent roles was Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh yeah, I have yet to watch that as well.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I am
As
so
an
behind on a lot
as
of
somebody who loves
big movies.
nostalgia, you'll appreciate Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for sure.
I'm sure I will. I think at the time I couldn't afford going to the movies because I was
Right.
barely affording eating in college. So
Oh, true.
it would make sense as to why I didn't see it.
Hmm.
But I do want to point out two more things that we're going to be talking
For
about
sure.
before we transition a little bit.
Yes. I
One of
apologize for all
them,
the hangups too.
no, 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 that's what we're here for. We love tangents. It's a podcast.
Yep.
But we're going to be talking about midnight premiere experiences and moving watching rituals.
Ooh,
So
let's go.
have you ever seen a midnight premiere experience? And I'm not talking about 7 p.m. the night before on a Thursday. I'm talking about 12
Midnight.
midnight on the dot.
I'm trying to think. I was gonna go to the midnight premiere of Dark Knight Rises, but unfortunately, before that happened, My grandmother passed away, unfortunately,
Oh, wow,
right
okay,
before that,
okay.
and they had planned for her funeral service to be on the day of. So because obviously, that's my family, I was more than willing to postpone Dark Knight Rises. But basically what happened was, funny enough, I woke up that next morning, and this was the first year of me having an iPhone, because I had just gotten an iPhone 4 at the time, because I think I was going on a trip to either New York or one of those places that summer. And basically, I had a bunch of stuff, and this was when you first get your first iPod or phone. You realize all the news apps you can get, all the stuff you can do on it. So I had a bunch of them installed. I don't have them installed anymore because they depress me. But then I did see, and then I saw the first headline was shooting at movie theater in Aurora, Colorado during Dark Knight Rises screening. And
Oh gosh, yeah.
yeah, it was tragic. And for a while, actually, that put me off from wanting to go watch movies, because I didn't know what was
Yeah.
going to happen. Because for the longest time, you think of the theater as one of the safest places. Everybody goes to have fun. Everybody wants to watch a movie, but unfortunately, there are just people in the world who don't like the world as much, and sometimes, unfortunately, they take it out on other people, and it's unfortunate. And all respect to those who lost their lives in that. And any other movie attacks. I know, because I know it's happened multiple times, unfortunately, now, but that was the biggest one. But to answer your question for midnight premieres, I can't really think of a big one that I went to. I think the closest I can think of was Captain America: Civil War. Was
Oh, that's a great one. That's a
Yeah, that
great
was
one.
one that I went to for that. And the most recent midnight screening I went to was of Matt Reeves' film The Batman, the one with
Oh,
Robert Pattinson.
okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
went to a midnight screening of that as well.
Very cool, very
And
cool.
whatnot. So yeah. What about you? What are some midnight experiences you've had?
So I've had quite a few. I just wanted to quickly go over the difference now between a midnight showing nowadays
Sure.
versus back in
Absolutely.
the day. Uh, Specifically prior to about 2012, I would say. A midnight premiere was exactly that. The only option you had to watch the movie was at midnight or on the Friday morning, and that initial release date, and then on. But nowadays you can watch it all day the Thursday before. So say if a movie comes out Friday, there will be at least 5 showings the day before starting at like maybe 2 p.m. Whereas
Absolutely.
back in the day, the only showing you had was like an 11:30 and a midnight showing.
Yeah.
So if you couldn't stay out late or if you couldn't stay up that long, you were missing midnight premieres because those were the only 2 options you had available.
Yeah.
One of my favorite midnight premieres of all time was the 2013 Evil Dead. That was
Oh, the
awesome.
remake?
Oh yeah, yeah. Everyone was, waiting in line. You had to get there at least 3 hours before the showing. You'd be sitting down with friends, waiting in line. That's the one that comes to mind because
Sure.
that was, I think, the last time I did an official midnight premiere.
I hear you.
Um, but for the most part, I ventured to those mostly with friends, never with my mom because my mom just could not stay up past like 10 p.m. on her own.
Fair enough.
So I've done my fair share of those. Are there any other, speaking on like sort of ritualistic experiences? Were there any other movie watching rituals that you had or that you and your family had back in the day for the theater experience?
I can't really think of rituals. The biggest thing I can think of, most off the top of my head, is probably the experience of going to, like, let's say, Christmas, because my family
Oh yeah,
is Jewish, so we don't celebrate Christmas really. But for anyone out there who is Jewish or has Jewish friends, know that the biggest Jewish thing is going to watch a movie and ordering Chinese food on Christmas Day, because oftentimes Jewish people celebrate Hanukkah, which happens in and around Christmas, but oftentimes either after, before. Rarely does it happen during. This last year it did, but rarely does it happen um, on Christmas. But oftentimes movie theaters are still open, so sometimes me and my family will go catch a movie early in the morning. We'll go get some food, and then we'll come home and just have a great rest of our day as well.
Well, it's funny. I feel like there are a lot of customs that sort of overlap too within the Latin community and your
Okay.
Jewish community,
Yeah.
because Latin Americans I found tend to practice the ritual of Christmas on Christmas Eve,
Sure.
therefore leaving all Christmas Day to recovering from a hangover or whatever, cleaning up. And my family would do just that. We would recover, go watch a movie, and then get Chinese food or get whatever was available at the time.
Oh, that's what's up. You speaking
Yeah.
my language.
Yeah. So that's definitely one. Another one I can remember that we also talked about in the last episode is, on a Friday going with friends, going to the movie, getting into group outings and making your own little traditions during high school or middle school.
Absolutely. No, 100%. Sometimes when I go with my friends, we had kind of the thing where, oftentimes we were excited. We would either, um, start quoting lines when we all got smartphones, sometimes even watching, like if we're watching a sequel, watching the previous one as we're waiting to get into the theater.
Hmm.
Kind of like, when people are waiting in line for video games, they're playing the past generation console before they pick up the newest console,
Oh yeah.
stuff like that. So that's kind of what we did. So those are really the only ones I had. Other than that, it was just go to the movie, enjoy your film, basically.
Yeah. I'll be posting this on the story, so look out for it.
Yep.
We want to know what your guys' rituals were.
Yes, please let us know if you had any rituals or any experiences of how you did that and whatnot. So, yeah, but most of the time movies that we go to, so I went with my one friend Kobe many times, and we would often go on a weekend, to go watch a movie. And then our tradition afterwards was we go get Starbucks after the movie
Oh
was
yeah,
done.
that sounds great.
We always got discount stuff. Obviously, we were stupid when we were young, so we'd often make Snapchats with it, and we were. I cringe at them now, but like we said some things that we don't stand by today. I'll just say that. We just because we were young, but I'm not gonna say what those were on the podcast. If somebody finds it, you'll know what I'm talking about, but I doubt you are because I'm pretty sure I buried them all. But yeah, those are the only rituals I really had. So let's keep the ball rolling then in that case. And one of the big things too is movie posters and trailers. Those were huge,
Oh yeah,
especially
the best.
because those were what got you to want to watch some of these movies. And I don't know if you remember this, but oftentimes when the franchise movies were coming out, you were getting trailer upon trailer upon trailer of something amazing. So, like, let's say you're going to watch Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. You're going to get an ad most likely for both Spider Man and Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh yeah.
And then all of a sudden, then you go into Lord of the Rings Two Towers and Harry Potter and I think Prisoner of Azkaban at that time. And now you're
Yeah.
getting ads for Batman Begins, especially with Harry Potter, because they were both made by Warner Brothers. I think actually in front of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, or I can't remember if it was Goblet of Fire or Prisoner of Azkaban, they debuted the teaser for Batman Begins
Ooh,
during
that's
that.
pretty cool.
Yeah, and so
That is pretty
can you
cool.
imagine you're about to watch Harry Potter and then you get the announcement that Batman's returning
Oh, absolutely. And
after a slew of failed ones?
and this was back in the day when trailers didn't give the whole plot in a 4-minute trailer. These were quick
Hmm.
and concise and gave you enough to keep you curious, but also left you feeling like, oh, okay, I think I know what this movie's about. I think I want to watch it. Nowadays, I watch a trailer and I know what the entire movie's about.
Exactly. That's actually a practice that did kind of start sometimes in the 70s, especially with drama films. Like
Okay.
Godfather, for instance, was basically just a clip show of still images from the movie because they were keeping that so mysterious. And that was the whole
Oh, yeah.
marketing plan behind The Godfather was it's mysterious, until you watch the actual movie and stuff like that. And then basically that gave the whole movie away. But that was also at a time I think when, you didn't have to worry about leak and spoiler culture, where people were
Oh, no, yeah.
intentionally trying to ruin movies for other people and such, and I think it was also at a time where people, Godfather was a book. Everybody knew it was going to happen. So they figured, we can show as much as we want. And I think people even do the same with some other franchise. But when it came to like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, people are like, you read the books, you probably know what's going to happen, but we're still going to keep you guessing because we have some surprises as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Mm. And then do you remember posters when posters were like you get teaser posters? Sometimes you would get like maybe a poster that like for Lord of the Rings, for instance, that just has a photo of Frodo's hand holding the one ring and that's all it is and it says like June 2001 or something like that.
Yeah, the thing about those posters is that the movie itself, the franchise itself,
Hmm.
created such big of a name that you didn't even have to have the title on the freaking poster and people would
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
Literally, one of the most seen billboards for Deathly Hollows Part 2 was "It All Ends," and it's in the Harry Potter font.
Hmm.
It doesn't say the title, it doesn't say that it's Harry Potter, but literally everyone around the world knows that it is.
And the only thing you see in the poster is a photo of the Elder Wand being held by Voldemort's hand. And the only reason you know is because of the nails, the way the hand is kind of,
Well, on one
and
of the
whatnot.
billboards that I saw, it just had clouds. It was just dark
Just
clouds.
dark clouds, and it just said it
Yeah.
all ends. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like,
Hmm.
how big of a movie do you have to be that you don't even have to advertise the name of the movie, because
Exactly.
it
It's
already has a fan base.
exactly. And that was one of the coolest things. Like I mentioned, the Lord of the Rings for Fellowship of the Ring, the very first poster was just a photo of Frodo's hand holding the ring, and it just had the release date, and the way you knew is it just had one ring to rule them all on the ring.
Yeah, see, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, and even with Spider-Man, all you had to do was just show a web being shot, and people were like, "Oh my God, we're getting Spider-Man." With
Yep.
Batman, Christopher Nolan, he doesn't even write Batman on the title screens. He just has a quick shot of the Bat logo, and that's how you know, oh, I'm in the right movie, and that's
Oh,
it.
yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And whatnot. Because Nolan doesn't do opening titles, which is one thing I do love about his films, by the way, is he never does opening titles or he
It
never does
takes
anything like
away. I've
that.
never agreed with opening titles unless it's Spider-Man because then they're really cool.
Opening titles, I think if you can do it well, it can make sense, but if it just
True.
drags, then that's a whole different
It
thing as
also
well.
helps that Danny Elfman did the soundtrack to Spider-Man,
And
so
and the same with Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard scoring the
oh yeah.
Batmans.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think that's what added for that. And really all I need is sometimes I don't mind a title screen like to tell us that we're watching said movie, but after that just get into the movie.
Just get into the meat of it.
Exactly. And that's
That's
the one thing
funny.
is those movies they didn't undermine and say, "Oh, people are dumb." It's like everybody knows who Batman is. You just show them the bat symbol and they know that we're in the right movie and that's all they need to know and get into it after that because Batman by that point already had such a big name around it.
Oh yeah,
And
truly,
Spider-Man
truly.
too
Yeah, yeah.
and
Now,
whatnot.
can you name a couple of the most memorable trailers that you've watched?
Ooh. I think probably the most memorable one that I remember watching when I was young was the trailer for Spider-Man 3. I remember when I went to watch
Okay.
that was incredible. I remember when I went to watch Happy Feet, the Warner Brothers film.
I love
That's
Happy Feet.
that's where they debuted the trailer for The Dark Knight, the one with Heath Ledger.
Really?
And
I
I was
wouldn't assume that they would do that. Oof.
Well, that was the trailer that didn't actually really reveal much of Heath, and it was the one
Oh,
where,
okay.
you just hear, "You've changed things forever. There's no
Oh,
going
interesting.
back. See, to them, you're
Interesting.
just a freak." Like me, that whole thing, they actually showed
Yeah,
it. But
okay.
again, because it's Warner Brothers, they have to get it in there. And then they did it, I think, as well for Order of the Phoenix, Dark Knight showed.
Whoa,
Um,
that's pretty cool.
and then that summer, it went head to head with another fantasy series, and that was The Chronicles of Narnia. And Narnia was
Oh
trying
my
hard because
gosh, yeah.
because they were trying to come before, and of course, Prince Caspian, which was the film that came out around time, bombed at the box office.
I was gonna say it had to have been Prince Caspian.
It bombed bad, and I mean, I don't hate it, but I can see why it did as bad as it did.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and it's because they were trying to also compete with Dark Knight. I'm like, you're not going to be able to compete with
No.
Christopher Nolan, and especially with the time being that Heath Ledger just had been announced that he had passed away. So of
Mm-hmm.
course,
Oh
Dark
yeah.
Knight's going to have the bigger name around it. It doesn't matter what you
100%.
do. It's going to outshine everything else because, for one, you have an actor who just gave the performance of his life, and guess what? He's not going to give another one again.
No, absolutely. And I
Rest
feel
in
like
peace, Heath Ledger.
the Narnia series is nowhere near as big as the superhero genre.
It's not,
So,
unfortunately.
Batman, of course, is going to win that game every time.
Yeah, Narnia tried to get on because that was Disney's way of trying to get on the fantasy train because it was held by
Yeah.
Warner and New Line.
Yeah.
but I think it's just because it didn't have the same creative team that was as dedicated as both the teams for Harry Potter and
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings was.
No, well, they had a good foundation because the first Narnia is a great movie. It's a fantastic movie, actually.
It is.
And, they laid the foundation for it, but unfortunately it didn't pay off the way that they should have planned it to.
No, and it's unfortunate, but that's probably the most memorable trailer I remember was seeing Dark Knights. I didn't get to watch Dark Knight, unfortunately, on
I
its
see.
original run because, my mom looked at it and she's like, "Yo, this is way too dark. I don't want you to watch this just yet." And so I was like,
Fair
"Okay."
enough.
I was pretty
Fair enough.
bummed, I'm not gonna lie, because I mean I remember everyone was talking about that movie afterwards. It was like that was the big movie of the year.
Oh, for sure. I mean, right after I did see it in theater on the night
Oh,
it came
nice.
out. But right after that, I went to Blockbuster.
Hmm.
Shout out to our last two episodes we were talking about
Yep, let's
Blockbuster, or
go.
2 episodes ago. But I went there and I got a life-size sticker of the Joker saying "Why so serious?" and I put it
Yep,
on my door.
that's iconic.
Yeah, yeah, just literal, like what uh how I'm trying to do math and think about how old I was. I was like 11 or 12
Wow.
with this big Heath Ledger,
Yep.
carving in.
I think I was 11 as well at that time too when
Yeah.
Dark Knight came out. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's the most memorable trailer I remember. I saw a lot of them. Of course, I saw the Tobey Maguire, the original Spider-Man teaser because that came on during the Super Bowl. I
Oh
remember
yeah, with the Twin
with
Towers,
the Twin
yeah.
Towers. Yeah, that came on because they teased that heavily because that was going to be the big film of 2002.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
That was
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
be the big push. Of course, my first movie would come in 2002, but it wasn't Spider-Man, unfortunately.
Ah, gotcha, gotcha. Okay, okay.
Yeah, it was a VeggieTales film that my parents took me to go watch.
Oh, okay,
So
okay. I,
yeah,
I enjoyed VeggieTales,
yeah,
um,
same.
back in the day.
Absolutely, yeah. I remember that was what they took me to watch for the first, and that was playing at the same time Spider-Man was playing because I remember vividly seeing posters all over the theater for Spider-Man
I
and
see, I
whatnot.
see.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it was crazy. But other than that, it was really cool. Do you have any memorable trailers you remember?
So you actually mentioned one of them, which is The Dark Knight.
Yep.
I remember I have been a big fan of the Joker pretty much all my life. I've
Same.
watched almost every rendition of the Joker, whether it be 1960s live action to even the Japanese ninja versions.
Yep.
But anyway, I loved the Joker, so I had to, of course, fall in love with the trailer. A couple of other honorable mentions that actually blew my mind when I saw them in theater. Like I saw the trailer in theater, and I've seen these all in theaters as well. Was 2008's Cloverfield.
Yep.
That was awesome.
Oh, Cloverfield. Yep.
Especially with
Mhm.
the handheld effect, that was super cool, and you didn't really see that often. Not since Blair Witch.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then another huge one was Michael Bay's 2007 Transformers. Oh my
Oh,
gosh, when
Transformers.
when that trailer came out, I'm pretty sure I like almost pooped my pants because that, oh my gosh, that was right up my alley. I loved that. And
Absolutely.
then in the same year, in 2007, the movie 300, which I actually, now thinking back, I
Oh.
did not watch this in theater, but I did
Okay.
rent it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but the trailer, oh
That
my
movie was
gosh,
wild.
what was it? I am Sparta or something like that.
Yep.
And they kicked them. Oh my gosh, so
Oh,
memorable.
this is Sparta.
Or this is Sparta. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This
Whatever.
is
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sparta.
Exactly,
I
exactly.
remember. Oh yeah. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
everyone was quoting that line.
I know. And we were what, in sixth grade, fifth or
Yeah.
sixth grade,
Yeah, and
and
like
people were quoting it. And I'm like, how did you get in the theater?
well, I think that line just became infamous just because of the way the line is delivered. So even you
Yeah,
didn't have to watch the movie to know this
true,
is Sparta.
true, true. And then my last pick is 2009's Avatar.
Okay.
When that trailer came out, it was like a monumental jump in CGI
Oh yeah, my
and
God.
and 3D and 4D movies. And when you just saw the visuals, it was like something you had never seen. I'm sure it's the same as, in the 1970s watching Star Wars, seeing
Okay.
all of the cool elements of practical effects and CGI and this and that. It was like so groundbreaking.
Oh
And
yeah.
now looking back, Avatar is just like another movie. But back in the day, back in 2008, 2009, like effects were never that good up until then.
Well, I mean, Avatar isn't just a movie because it is among one of the biggest movies of all time.
Yes, it
So,
is.
I mean,
If not the highest grossing film, one of the highest grossing films of all time.
I'm pretty sure it still is actually, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I bet. I never know when it comes to Avengers Endgame because those numbers are just so
Yeah,
similar, you
well,
know?
Endgame I think had it, and then when Avatar got re-released just before Way of Water came out, it took it back over.
No way. That
Yeah,
is
I'm
awesome.
pretty
That
sure,
is
but
awesome.
Endgame is up there. Endgame is right there
Oh
because
yeah.
that was another one that was a big monumental um success as well. But
Mhm.
if that's all you got,
That's all I got.
I'd say let's keep the ball rolling. Let's keep going on with this. Now, I do not have much. I'd never been to a drive-in movie, so I'm gonna let you take the reign on this one.
So, a drive-in movie theater experience consisted of you being in your car with your family or by yourself or on a date, you going to this massive, usually dirt lot, them giving you a code for a
Yep,
frequency on the radio that you would adjust the knobs to. You would park in front of the screen that you paid for, adjust the knob so that the radio frequency is on the correct number for the correct screen,
yep,
and you would listen to the movie through your radio and watch it in your car. And you would walk out of your car into the concession stand area to
yep.
go get your popcorn, whatever, bring that back to your lady or your gentleman or your kids, whatever,
Your friend.
your friend, whatever, and you would enjoy the experience. And oftentimes they were double features. So you would go pay one movie and then another movie would come on after that. And you would have to
Yeah.
change frequencies or keep on the same frequency. Now, something that you don't really have to deal with nowadays, especially since uh, some drive in theaters have since closed.
Mhm.
Um, but children pressing buttons and changing the frequency to where you miss a line in a movie because now you're listening to um a talk show host or something like that. That's something that there are a couple
Yeah.
inconveniences that happen throughout the drive-in era that make sense as to why they didn't stay as long as we wish them to. But I
Yeah.
believe there are still some drive-in theaters out there serving the sense of nostalgia. It was mostly
Oh yeah.
popular between like the 1950s to like the 1980s and
Yeah.
is still lived on. And I know for a fact that our parents probably have a lot of memories of drive-in theaters. I know for a fact my mom does because she comes from a family of about 5 or 6,
Mm.
and that's a pretty penny per ticket. So
Yeah.
they would hide under the car or in the car but under the seats so that
I was just about to bring that up. I was
yeah.
just about to bring that up actually because my parents would tell me the same thing. They said that they would sneak people into the drive-in by hiding them in the trunk, especially if they were kids.
Oh yeah, put some blankets over. Yeah, because it would be technically had my mom's parents paid for everything, they would be paying for 7 or 8 tickets.
Yeah.
And at the time, that's a lot for a
Hmm.
big family. So what do? You hide your kids.
Yeah. And the drive-in was also known, from what I know about it, was known for a lot of those more sleazier type of films at times.
Oh, interesting.
The more lower budget at times, like the more kind of like those B horror movies at times would play often at the drive-in. Some of
Okay,
them
I can see that.
were more grindhouse-esque. If you don't know what a
Mm,
grindhouse is, that was like a big thing, and that was more in the 70s, little lot
yeah.
really before our time, but um
Tarantino tried to bring it back,
Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez both
and
tried
Robert
to
Rodriguez. Yep,
really try
yep.
to bring that back. I will say, of the two, as much as I love Mr. Tarantino's Death Proof, I think Planet Terror was the better film personally. But we're not that's a conversation for another time. But basically, no, grindhouses were basically theaters. They showed what are known as exploitation films, movies that were really
Hmm.
big on graphic violence,
Nudity,
nudity,
sexuality.
sexuality,
Yep.
and a lot of crazy thrills, crazy stuff happening. Very unrealistic films, but
Oh
also
yeah.
some of the grossest out there that push the boundaries. Movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I Spit
Hmm.
on Your Grave, um, Last House on the Left. Those are examples of grindhouse movies, but sometimes drive-ins would play those as well. But actually, funny enough, the only thing I think I ever heard about the drive-in where my folks went, I can't remember if it was my mom or dad, but one of them went to a drive-in and they actually watched The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly when that came out
Oh,
in the
that is
60s.
awesome. That is
Yeah, so and of
awesome.
course back then, they were not rated R, so they were just not rated at the time, which I think those movies are pretty tame for R-rated films, if I'm being honest. The Man with No
Okay.
Name films, um, just because they're not terribly graphic, but I can see why because they did push the boundary for a typical Western.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely,
and that
absolutely.
was before movies like The Wild Bunch, which really upped the ante for graphic violence in a Western. So. Um, and whatnot. But drive-ins, that's really all I know about drive-ins, if I'm being honest.
Mm.
But
The
yeah.
last movies I watched at actually the last and only, I've
Mhm.
only had one experience at the drive-in, but I've heard a plethora of stories from my mom.
Yep.
But the only movies that I watched at the drive-in were Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory
Oh,
and Bad News Bears. But I didn't watch
okay.
the entirety of Bad News Bears because my mom didn't really care for the language that was going on.
Oh, okay.
Um, but yeah,
Gotcha, for sure, for sure.
yes. But
Well,
going off of those memorable experiences, do you have any memorable theater experiences now, like indoor theater?
indoor theater experiences, shoot. I mean, there's a bunch I can go over, but I think I'm just gonna go over maybe one or two. Oops, sorry, I dropped my pen.
Yeah, for sure.
Basically, the biggest one I can think of is when we look at movie theater experiences, one of the biggest ones I think of often is my experience with the MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe, and those were really huge because I mean, they were I think the first real franchise film I really kind of got into and stuck with. I will admit I didn't see many of I didn't see Incredible Hulk, I didn't see Captain America First Avenger, I didn't see a lot of those movies in the theaters. But the first one I saw was The Avengers, the 2012 Avengers film.
Oh,
And that movie
whoa.
blew my mind to see every single character from my past year movies now in a movie all together. And I'm like, this is actually a cool concept. I'm like, I can get behind this. And it kept the continuity from the solo films because I saw um okay, I did lie. I saw Iron Man 2 when that came out, actually.
Okay.
Iron Man 1 I rented from Hollywood Video. I remember when that came out. And then Iron Man 2 I went and saw at the theater, and then Avengers, and then after that, then of course, then I tried to stick with the series as much as I could. And then from that point, I think I saw everyone all the way till Endgame.
Now that you mention it, I think, and I didn't really realize this about myself, but I think I've seen every MCU movie in theater on the night that it came out, except for the Ant-Man series because I didn't really care for the Ant-Mans.
Hmm.
But I think I've seen almost all of them except for the Ant-Man series.
Gotcha. I saw the majority of them for sure. I still have my ticket stub actually from Avengers Endgame. So
Really? Oh, that's
yeah,
sick.
I do. I have my ticket stub still from Endgame, and I think I still have Infinity Wars as well. So
Oh, that's sick. I
yep.
remember a friend and I snuck in Del Taco. I didn't eat the Del Taco, he did.
Oh,
But
Del
we
Taco
snuck in the Del Taco.
of
Uh on
all
Marketplace?
foods of
Or no,
all
no, on
foods.
no, is it 89 or Route 66? On Route
I know what
66,
you're talking about.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That Del Taco.
Oh,
Packed
that's
up.
funny.
He made me bring my it was a horse bag that I have that's about like this big, and he
Hmm.
just filled all of it with Del Taco. It was so funny.
That's funny. I mean, sneaking snacks in is something I think we've all done. I've
Oh
definitely
yeah.
done it. A lot of other people have done it. I will say, when you look at it, if people ask, is it really wrong or is it kind of a protest? When you kind of look at that whole thing, I think it's a little bit of both. I do try to buy some stuff at the concessions, like the popcorn. I'll obviously buy at the concessions. I'll buy a soda usually, but anything else, I try to sneak it in.
No, that's fair. I did movie hop and sneak snacks and whatnot,
Movie hopping.
growing. Yeah, I did all that growing up, but now I'll sneak snacks mostly for health reasons.
Fair.
Um, not trying to have a lot of sugar, or I have a sparkling water I want to bring in that's flavored,
Yeah.
or what have you. That's when I'll do it mostly, but
Sure. Absolutely.
I'm not, I don't see anything wrong with this, but I've seen like TikToks and Instagrams of people bringing an entire like rotisserie in their purse, or like
That's
meals
wild.
and stuff. And
That's
that's
wild.
dedication right there. That is
That's wild.
dedication right there.
Sure. Yeah. Oh no,
Um,
absolutely. But that's still crazy to think that people are sneaking in whole meals now.
oh yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
crazy. That is wild. I'm still can't even wrap my head around that. But
But on the topic though of memorable theater experiences, I don't know if you would remember this,
mhm,
or if you remember seeing as Fred or whatever. But did you ever see in theaters Rugrats Go Wild?
I did not.
Okay, so that was released in June of 2003. And this movie was basically a crossover between the Rugrats and the Wild Thornberrys. So two of some of
Oh,
my favorite shows growing up from
okay.
Nickelodeon. And actually two of the biggest animated series at the time. One of the most memorable marketing gimmicks that they did, and one of the most memorable movie theater experiences that I had was going to this movie because they included a Smell-O-Vision scratch and sniff card to
Mhm.
each theater goer. And it was officially called an odorama. The card fee, right? How funny is
That's
that?
wild.
The card featured numbered spots that viewers scratched at specific times during the movie. Scents ranging from tropical fruits to less on-screen or to less pleasant smells like Nigel Thornberry's feet would come up on the screen, and you would scratch it, and it would be that. Timed numbers would flash on the screen to cue the audience as to when to scratch the card. So I have some vivid memories of scratching, sniffing, looking up at the screen, and then
Yeah.
oh, number 8, scratching that. Oh my gosh,
Wow.
that's a diaper or something like that.
What?
And you don't see that ever again.
What?
Like you really never saw that ever again after that.
Shoot, I
It
forget sometimes that movie theaters had these trends.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And in, like for another example, Snakes on a Plane, the
Oh, I this
2006
one I do
film,
remember.
people
Yeah.
brought plastic snakes in, and
Yeah.
sometimes theaters would give out plastic snakes.
Yep. And
And
sometimes people would throw them in the middle of
uh,
the showing.
exactly, exactly.
And
They
then
made it a very universal experience.
and Snakes on a Plane was also one of the first times that, I mean, obviously audiences were already saying lines with the characters in the movies. That started with Star Wars and whatnot, but like Snakes on the Plane was the first time like you would actually see a whole audience, with the line, "I have had it with these monkey fighting snakes on this Monday
Yep.
to Friday plane."
Samuel L. Jackson just serving up lines left and right.
Yeah, and people were actively saying that with him. Like people knew
Oh
the
yeah.
line, and then they just wait for that moment. And sometimes they just go to watch that moment, and then at the time, you hear the whole theater. Enough is enough. I have had it, and the whole
Oh
thing.
my
Of course, they would
gosh.
quote the uncensored version of the line, but
Yeah.
it's still
Yeah.
it's crazy. But
And the last actually example, and
hmm?
this was around the time where we were in middle school.
Yeah.
So let me know the hype that you heard, because for some reason, this movie was so big with middle school boys.
Hmm.
Bruno from 2009, Sacha Baron Cohen.
Oh, yes, I remember this. Yeah.
Yep.
It was never big
So
with me, but I remember it being big with my friends and such. Yeah.
theaters were especially vigilant about enforcing this movie's R rating because it was extremely explicit. They
Hmm.
implemented strict ID checks, they had
Oh, they
managers and
had to.
security on site through every showing. Whereas now it's like more relaxed. If it's a rated R movie, they'll check your ticket at the front and then you're free to do whatever you
Yeah.
want.
They
But back
did
in
it.
the day, they would put managers at the door
Hmm.
and would not let you in and out without seeing your ticket and checking your ID.
They did that with Deadpool.
Did they do
Actually,
that with
they did that with
Deadpool?
Deadpool because
That's
when
hilarious.
the first Deadpool came out, they did that. They didn't do it with Deadpool 2, but they did it again with Deadpool and Wolverine. So,
Well, I saw it with my mom, so I saw the original Deadpool with my mom, so it makes
mm,
sense as to like why they didn't ID me. But
sure.
that's crazy.
But Harkins up here, yeah, they were IDing people when they went into the theater. They were like, "We need to see your ticket stub and your ID."
Wow. Wow. That
Yeah,
is
so
crazy.
yeah, it's pretty wild actually, to
Yeah.
think that there's a time where that happened. But with that, my friend, unless you have anything else, I think we can move on to the next segment.
Yeah, let's do it.
In this segment, we're going to be looking more at kind of where it went from the 2010s to kind of almost where we are now, the 2020s, where going on there through that. And there's just so many things that have changed since that era. Obviously, I know we talked about a lot of franchise films in the early 2000s. It felt like every movie was an event, and it still is kind of like that to a good extent. But there are definitely a lot of changes, especially with now having luxury theaters. We have streaming, obviously, is a big thing, and what made some of streaming actually become more necessary was the pandemic of 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic,
Oh
and
my god, yeah, that changed a lot.
that really did change a lot of things. And one of the big things I noticed is, we when we look at streaming, especially with places like Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, HBO Max, and a lot of those, it really changed the whole movie going experience because when the COVID pandemic happened, everything shut down, and it was something that I don't think society was ever used to in our generation.
Or ready
Um,
for.
or ready for. It's just like all of a sudden, when COVID first happened, I remember most of my friends were just like, oh, it's a virus, I'm not worried, all this and this. And then when people realized just how severe COVID is, and once COVID started to spread as fast as it did, that's when the whole lockdowns went into effect. And now you can't even go out and watch a movie. You can't go out and even eat at a restaurant. You can't even go out and really go to a store. I mean, obviously grocery stores had to stay open for people to get their business, but it really changed a lot of things, and movie theater experiences were because there were so many movies scheduled to come out in 2020 that they kept getting pushed back.
Oh my gosh,
And
yeah.
and then finally, then most of them, especially like Disney's Mulan, which was the biggest one scheduled to come out in, I think it was March 2020, got pushed back to July. And then when they saw the pandemic wasn't slowing down, they just put it on Disney Plus.
I know the straight to streaming trend I was never really a fan of when it came to big box franchises,
Likewise.
I just thought it was a cop out, but at the end of the day they needed to make their movies or they needed to make their money. The production, all of that, they needed to make it back. So I mean it makes sense, but it really was not ideal.
Exactly. And it was really unfortunate that um streaming or not streaming, but the theaters took that big of a hit. And the
Oh
same
yeah.
happened with so many other movies that are supposed to come out that year. A lot of Warner Brothers movies got put on HBO Max. I remember Many Saints of Newark, the Sopranos film, got put on HBO Max, even with theaters kind of opening back up at the end of that year. Black Widow barely got its theatrical
Barely.
release,
Yeah.
barely, because they were gonna put that on Disney, and then they finally, when theaters open, they said, okay, we can give it a limited showing. Now,
Yeah.
one film I will say that I was glad that they waited as long as they did, even though it got pushed back over 2 years, was Top Gun Maverick.
Whoa, I didn't know that they pushed that back.
Top Gun Maverick got pushed back at least 5 to 6 times, and it actually started
Whoa.
before the pandemic. Top Gun Maverick was originally supposed to come out in 2018, but Tom Cruise wanted to delay it because they needed more time to complete the flying scenes. Because if you didn't know, Top Gun Maverick uses all practical effects. So
Yeah,
everyone in
that's
the jets
amazing.
is really in jets, everybody doing that. Tom Cruise actually got to launch off the aircraft carrier himself because he is a pilot, actually. So they let him actually do that stunt himself, which I thought was cool.
He's living the
Um,
dream, that's for sure.
he is. And when Top Gun Maverick first got delayed, people were like, okay, it's whatever. But then the pandemic happened, and then everyone was telling him, put it on Paramount, put it on Paramount. Tom Cruise said, no, this needs to come out in theaters. And people thought it was a cop out because they're like, it's probably not good because people are like, if he's delaying it this much and refusing to put it on streaming, he just wants a cash grab and he's too much of a traditionalist. And that's what people were really saying. And then Top Gun Maverick comes out and people are going, my gosh, this needed to be seen in the theaters.
Well, that's sort of like, Christopher Nolan being like, "Oh yeah, you can watch Oppenheimer on your phone. You
Yeah,
don't
but
have to go to the theater for it."
it hits
You know,
differently.
it hits different, it's differently. It's a completely different
Yeah,
experience.
Nolan
It
actually
immerses you.
Nolan refuses to release any of his movies to streaming, actually. I mean, aside from ones
Well,
that
like
already played in
straight
the
to
theaters.
straight to
Yeah,
streaming.
he will not do
Mm,
straight to streaming. Like that's a part
yeah.
of his contract, Christopher Nolan, and I
Yeah.
applaud him for that for sure. Because
Yeah. No,
um,
I do too. That's
and
amazing.
whatnot. But I think really with Top Gun Maverick, Tom Cruise knew how important that was, and he was willing to wait until the pandemic was mostly over till then. And excuse me, thankfully, when Top Gun Maverick came out, a lot of business was starting to get back to normal at that time because it came out, I think, in
Oh.
March. I believe it was March 2022, or no, May 2022. It came out and it played that whole summer. That was the biggest movie of that year, and that I often credit that as the movie that saved the theaters because it got people going back in to watch it.
Well, that's a great point that you make because there was a point during the pandemic and even post-pandemic that the film world had this fear that theaters would soon become obsolete if we had another pandemic or if we had something worse than a pandemic coming up
Yep.
because it showed that the arts aren't necessary as not necessarily essential for survival,
Yeah.
but they're essential for our sanity. So, like, there's this push
Hmm.
to continue to go to the movies. And, if you have the option for streaming it, sure, you can do that. But there's an even bigger push to just go experience it in the movie theater because
Absolutely.
that's where a lot of the production costs go to,
Yeah.
that's box office money is how people get paid. And if you're paying for a subscription on Disney Plus or this or that, the
Hmm.
money's not going to get allocated the way that it should be.
Yeah.
It's going to go to those big streaming conglomerates.
Absolutely, and that's the biggest thing about that. And yeah, I can understand why some content might get released straight to streaming, but I think also it messes up a lot of the theater experience as well. Because look
Mhm.
at the MCU. I mean, now you have movies, and thankfully they're starting to peel back on this more. But like, let's say for instance, you have a movie like Avengers Infinity War, one of those films, and then the
Mhm.
next thing you know, WandaVision comes out, and now they're using elements in the movie theater that were in WandaVision, and you don't have a Disney Plus subscription, you can't watch WandaVision. Now you go into this movie and you're confused because they're telling you you need to have watched WandaVision,
That's a good
and you're
point.
going, what the heck? Like now you're throwing me completely off. Like if you're gonna do a side series, maybe don't make it canon to the actual movie theater experience because more people can go watch a movie than are probably gonna have a streaming service. Now that's probably reversed now, but at the time that was different, you know?
What do you
And
think about sort of like the intertwining world and lore in the Star Wars Disney franchises of how the you have some shows and some mini movies on Disney Plus that are lore are that are canon to the
yeah.
lore, the current cinematic lore, but you need to watch them in order to understand it. What do you think about that? Because that's sort of like around the same coin.
I'm 50-50 because for one, I feel like with those you don't necessarily have to watch them to understand the main Star Wars storyline.
That's a good
I
point. Okay.
think obviously if you were to even skip Clone Wars the series, you can still understand the events from Attack of the Clones into
But
Revenge
you
of the
would be
Sith.
doing yourself an absolute disservice if you do that, people. Do not never skip Clone Wars.
I mean, you do, but I mean, at the same time, it's kind of like you can still follow it because I mean, let's be
Yeah.
real. When those movies were coming out, Ahsoka Tano was not even a character.
Yeah, but also like if you go straight from Attack of the Clones to Revenge of the Sith, Anakin's fall to the dark side just seems really abrupt and random. You don't really see everything
Yeah,
that he went through in the
that's
Clone
true.
Wars.
That's true. Okay, Clone Wars is one I'll give credit to, but at the same time, what I mean is that
You're not getting the full experience, but you'll understand.
you'll understand it. That's the main thing. Is kind of like that's kind of like the same with Obi-Wan. You're still gonna understand episodes 4, 5, and 6 if you go from Revenge of the Sith to A New Hope. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's kind of like yeah, Obi-Wan's a cool show, but it's like you don't need it necessarily to understand the rest of them. Same with the
true.
Mandalorian. You don't need the Mandalorian to understand from Return of the Jedi all the way to Force Awakens.
No,
Or in that
absolutely.
vein. And I think that's one thing Star Wars did do pretty well. I mean, if you want to understand it, cool, but if not, it's cool. Now, Rogue One's a special case, and that's because one, yes, I'm biased, it did come out in theaters, but it is essential, I feel like, if you want to understand where the galactic or where the rebellion's coming from, if you
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
want to understand how A New Hope kicks off, you should watch Rogue One, I feel like
Yeah.
and whatnot. But I definitely think with Star Wars, they do a good job of keeping it fun and entertaining while not necessarily forcing you to watch the series. Now, do I think they do it well all the time? No.
Yeah.
Um, I'll definitely say that, but at least it's not something that it's required viewing, whereas with the MCU, it's often required viewing. You
Well,
know,
that's
like,
the thing that's also what's beautiful about the MCU though, is that it sort of forces you to immerse yourself. The only thing that's not canon really in the MCU, specifically MCU Disney,
mhm.
is the What If series. That's
Yeah,
pretty much the only thing that's not like canon.
no, but it does help to watch that if you were gonna watch something like Multiverse of Madness, for instance, because
Yeah.
it runs on the same premise, obviously. I
Yeah.
mean, no events happen in Multiverse of Madness that happen in What If. I mean, a couple of them come close, but oftentimes, if you want to understand the structure of Multiverse of Madness, then for sure watch What If. But other than that, What If is
Also,
just fun.
watch Loki too to understand the
Yeah,
multiverse.
exactly. But the thing my main point of that is that it can get annoying, especially for people who don't have those services,
Oh
to
yeah.
feel like now they have to go get one of those services in order to fully understand the MCU past Endgame.
Well, that's exactly how they structured it so that you sort of
Mhm.
force yourself to pay for it,
And that, yeah,
unfortunately.
exactly. And I get it, and I'm not against it. I'm just saying that it kind of
Yeah.
sucks at the same time. So
No,
that's just my only
yeah.
point. And
Yeah.
whatnot. And then of course, when we look at that too, we have, the rise now of the premium theater. Now it's not just multiplexes. Now you have theaters where there's a whole bar, there's a whole
A
restaurant.
restaurant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and sometimes you can even get food brought to your seat.
Not sometimes. At every one of these luxury places, you get food, sometimes blankets and pillows, alcoholic
Yeah.
cocktails, all of that.
Yep.
The thing is, you grab a ticket, you
Hmm.
grab a drink at the bar concessions,
Yep.
you make your way to your assigned seat, which you paid for. And the assigned seating actually happened in these luxury theaters, even at the same time that chain theaters did not do assigned seating. So,
Yeah.
if anything, these were like the precursors to the assigned seating game.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then a waiter or some sort of automated screen would pop up and you would order. Even during the movie you can order, before
Yeah.
the movie, during the movie, whatever, and someone will come to you, give you your little
And you don't even have to leave the
plate.
movie.
Nope, you don't have to leave your the only time you have to leave your seat is for the
The
restroom.
restroom, yeah.
So
Or if you
they
have a kid.
definitely, or if you have a kid, for sure, for sure. So these theaters, some of the theaters actually
Mhm.
offered like a bed like seat
Oh yeah.
where
Hmm.
you could lie down
And they're
fully
not
and have.
reclining seats either. They're
No, no,
like
no,
full,
no.
you
It's
kick
like
your
a
feet up.
no. This is like a mattress. Like it's not even a chair. It's like they're mattresses.
What the hell?
And yeah, yeah. So it's like you're eating in bed while watching a movie in a movie theater. It's amazing, but you're paying upwards of like $30 to $40 per ticket. So it is a
Exactly.
pretty penny, but these things are luxurious. You think
Yeah.
recliners in theaters are luxurious? Go to one of these places. I've heard some pretty insane stories about
Hmm.
how cool they can be.
You will spend a pretty penny at those places, though, I will
Hmm.
say. It's
On
not.
just on your ticket. Just on
Yes,
your
just on
ticket.
your ticket, you're going to pay a pretty penny because you're going to pay maybe $10 more than what you'll pay at an average theater.
Yeah, and then that's not including the price of food.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
you can get so much there. I know Harkins has one, I think, in Scottsdale or somewhere. And then they also have the
Ooh.
freezer, of course, which is wild. Which is basically like an underground screening, private screening room. I'm not
Oh,
even
that
joking
is
when I say it.
amazing.
Yeah, we'll have to book the one of these days if we ever make a movie or something. We'll have to book the freezer for that.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
Holy cannoli.
just you, me, and a few other friends, and we'll watch something there. But yeah, it's interesting to see, how the rise in these kinds of theaters now are kind of pushing in. Now, I won't say they're taking over movies because I think a lot of people still go to the regular theater, obviously, to save money. And also,
Oh
these
yeah.
premium theaters are not available everywhere. They're only
They're
really in
not.
big cities. So if
Yeah.
you come to a smaller city like where I'm from, you're not going to see these places at all.
There isn't really a desire from the community, so like it makes
No.
sense. It makes
Exactly.
sense.
So, but they're really cool to see that you have these options though too now,
Yeah.
just to go watch a movie and you can feel like royalty.
Oh yeah, I've had some of the best food at Roadhouse Cinemas here in Tucson, which is
Mhm.
exactly this, a luxury or a semi-luxury theater.
Yep. I've never had one before. I'm hoping maybe one day I'll go to one, but it has to be a special movie. It can't just be
Oh,
any
for
movie.
sure.
It has to be
For
something
sure.
big, something that I know I'm gonna enjoy. Like maybe Secret Wars. I'll do it.
So
do
okay, I could see that for sure.
yeah, Secret Wars. I might do that, or maybe if they do Godzilla minus one, two, or Godzilla minus two, I'll do it.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, yes.
So
My biggest issue is that anytime I eat, I have to take a nap after. So I really try not to
oh
go to those theaters because then I
yeah,
get
yeah, yeah.
really sleepy.
Or you consume too many cocktails and next thing you're drunk and you pass out.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But I would not pay for theater cocktails though. Those are just
You might as
overpriced.
well just sneak in shooters at that point.
A whole bottle at that point.
Screw that. That's funny.
Oh my
Yeah, for
gosh.
sure. And then the last thing too on here, we kind of talked about this earlier, but the
Mhm.
idea now of picking your own seat versus general admission.
What do you think about that? I don't know if I love it or if I hate it or if I'm just neutral about it because I don't know.
Kind of like I said earlier, I'm 50-50, and the biggest reason is because there is an advantage to it and there is a disadvantage to it. The
Yep.
advantage is you're not fighting over who's going to sit where. You don't have to worry about being awkward asking is this seat available when yet you're saving it for a friend. You don't have a lot of aggression and it cuts down and it just gets right to the nitty-gritty. And
Good point.
it does make sense, in theory, and it does work in practice, but it does kind of take away from the feel of being in a line. It takes away from the experience of going there early with your friends, and you don't really have those stories now, aside from the fact well, I bought my tickets like a month in advance for this movie,
No, yeah. Well, I
and whatnot.
remember even last episode we were talking about how Revenge of the Sith had its 20th anniversary re-release
Yep,
and you were telling me to like get tickets now. And I mean, at one point that was the case for sure,
yep.
but because of seat arrangements and, the amount of theaters you could have in wherever you're living,
Hmm.
it takes away that extra stress where prior to picking your seat, you had to literally strategize what time you were getting out of school, when your parents were going to pick you up, or when you were going to walk to the mall, or this or that, just to make it on time to get the tickets.
Yeah,
Because sometimes the tickets for a movie would be sold out a day before. And even then, that doesn't promise you a seat.
no,
Theaters were notorious for overselling.
yeah.
Notorious.
I remember when Civil War came out, we showed up about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. People had been sitting in that theater since 9 in the morning.
I believe
So
it. I
all that was
believe it.
available was up in the front, kind of. So
Hmm.
thankfully a couple of my friends showed up. So we did the strategy where it's like I sit in one and save three, and then he sits a few rows down and saves like three.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You
So,
sort of had to bring friends for that because as a single person, saving your seats for your friends who were gonna come later was really difficult because, like, say
mhm.
you had a jacket on,
Yeah.
however far your jacket could span over the seats was however many you were saving. Other than
Yep.
that, it was pretty much a free for all.
Yeah, and then there were those who brought blankets to throw over the seats, and those people are
Mhm.
hated in theaters. I know for a fact those people are not well liked when they throw
No, no,
when you
no.
throw a blanket over like 5 or 6 seats. You're kind of like, okay, you're not being fair at this point.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, people do what they got to
I
do,
mean,
but
exactly. You do what you
be
got to do,
considerate. Be
and
considerate.
yeah, and it's just wild, but yeah, I remember when that was a thing, but picking seats was, when it makes sense. I can see why they do it now because too many people unfortunately have caused too many incidences and whatnot. So it makes sense that you can pick your seats. The only thing also I don't care about picking seats, and this is where my other 50-50 comes in, is sometimes you don't know who you're gonna pick a seat next to is the thing.
That's
And
fair. Yeah.
sometimes, they can be obnoxious, sometimes they
Mhm.
can be crazy,
They could even just
sometimes
smell bad, you
that
know?
too, and that's the thing is you just don't know. I mean, it was still unpredictable back in the day, but you still
Mhm.
had some variety. If you wanted to move, you could, meaning like you said, if a
That's
person
a good
smells
point.
bad, you could still move to another place. If the person's being disruptive, you can move. Now you have to get the theater staff involved and ask them, "Can I move my seat?" And most of the time they are
Mhm.
accommodable in that regard. If somebody's being noisy or loud, and then they'll often go to the person too and they'll say, "Hey, we ask that you guys be quiet."
Fair enough. Now, my only gripe with being able to select your seats is I was notorious for this with my little friend group in
Yeah.
middle school and high school, but I would movie hop all the time. And
Yeah.
when when you buy an assigned seat, you can't do that because
Yeah.
the theater manager knows how many tickets were sold for that movie, and they know where everyone's supposed to be sitting, and they know where everyone's supposed to be not sitting, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not like you could sneak in and be a part of the audience and, go unnoticed. You can't do that anymore. Whereas
Well,
back in the day, you could.
well, let's remember also that that's probably one of the reasons that was invented as well to stop people from
Exactly.
doing stuff like that.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
Because
Yeah.
now I remember even when I tried to hop from one movie to another, they are so stickler of looking out for that. And like I
Yeah,
said,
they're
now
like, we
they
just saw you. You're going into another movie. You got to pay for it. Like,
and now they have, even before that, they have people who are actually in there, like I said, and
mhm.
sometimes they'll actually, they'll just send a text message to the manager of the theater, or they'll do something like that, like this person did not pay for this movie because they just went from this theater to this theater, and they don't
Yeah.
have a seat. We didn't see them come in the initial. So yeah,
Yeah,
they're getting
yeah.
smart now is the thing.
They are.
They're
They are.
just
They're
they're
trying
getting
to
too smart.
their prices are going up, and their moral for security is also going up as well, or their morale for security.
Mhm.
But this is actually not a segue, but a great time to actually get into our third segment, which is
Yes.
my personal favorite, and that is fun facts and trivia.
What a difference. I couldn't help it. I had to do it.
Blockbuster video.
Ow, what a difference.
Alrighty,
Let's do it.
so you want to start out for us, my friend?
I'd be glad to start us off with some fun facts. Okay. So let's take a look here. Fun facts and trivia time. So the first fun fact that I have is, and actually, this is perfect because I was just talking about this as well. The people who watch for this stuff, many movie theaters now often have undercover security in the theater that often occupy the back seats in any given theater in case of threats or unruly patrons. And this was
Whoa.
mostly big after the 2012 Aurora shooting, obviously, because, now they really want to watch for people who might try and harm people in the theaters. One thing that sometimes these people look out for too is people who leave through the side exits, especially during the movie, because
Yes.
oftentimes that's how the person in Colorado did it actually, and he actually propped the door open. So one of their jobs
Yeah.
too is if somebody is to prop the door like that, they're to kick the object out.
Yeah.
Because at that
Well,
point,
the Aurora shooting did it changed a lot.
it did change a lot in terms of movie going, and I think a lot of it's because when people think of, unfortunately, shootings on that scale, and it's something I it's very difficult to talk about, but you don't usually think of like a movie theater as being a
No.
target.
Now it's common everywhere. But at the time, like thinking of it happening at a movie theater was just like, whoa, what?
Yeah, because unfortunately, before that, one of the big ones, of course, was schools. Unfortunately, it still
Yeah.
is. And
Schools and
maybe
malls. Yeah.
malls, workplaces, stuff like that.
Oh
Nobody
yeah.
really thought of the movie theater until that
Yeah.
happened, and so
Yeah.
it was big. But I'm glad that they do have extra protection in there, and also these people usually don't get involved in, like, let's say maybe shout. I don't want to say shouting matches, but like people arguing, people doing things like that. And that's because they usually, in that case, they ask the theater staff to deal with it because it's kind of like at that point, it's like it's your job. I'm just here for extra backup, basically. So those are the people who are like, if they see someone throw a fist, then they can get in there if they need to, or if they see somebody with a suspicious object, they can act.
So would you compare them to like an air marshal?
I guess you could say that. They're not in every theater, but it's usually on like big showings
Big
or like
showings. Okay.
Batman or stuff like that. And
Yeah.
usually, like I said, they're undercover, so oftentimes they look like anybody else, and then you're not going to know who they are until something happens, and then they're like, like federal marshal or security officer, you're under arrest.
Yeah.
And then they call the police and then have them take them usually at that point. But
Where were they during the Minecraft showings? Because holy cannoli, I've seen some pretty
that's
insane
what I
videos.
was wondering. And like I said, I don't think they were ready for what was going to happen with Minecraft either,
Good
because
point.
they probably thought Minecraft was just like, oh, it's just this movie.
It's a children's game.
I know with Joker they had him though. When Joker came out, they actually had a
Oh
bunch of them,
yeah.
And there were
Oh,
even
yeah.
police cars out front of the theater when Joker came out in 2019, the Joaquin Phoenix one.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
For
And
sure.
as we know, no one went to Folia Do. No, I'm kidding.
Yep, exactly. I mean, people went, but then they were disappointed. Then nobody went.
Yeah, then nobody went, so
Yep.
they didn't need a marshal for that.
Nope, absolutely not. But number two of my fun facts is, and this one's going to shock a lot of people because we all know the concession stand for what it is now. Early movie theaters often banned snacks and food due to concerns of theaters becoming incredibly dirty and annoying with like the ruffling of food and stuff. But though over time, especially during the era of the Great Depression, theaters would allow vendors to come and set up snack bars outside the theater. And then when they saw the profit that it was turning, then they started to make their own concession stands as a ways to bank on some of that. Because obviously, as we know with the box office, most of that goes back to the studio. The theater only keeps a certain amount. So their biggest moneymaker is the snack bar.
No wonder I'm paying for a $27 candy box.
Exactly, yeah. But it's crazy to think that at one time it was banned. They would tell you, you have a water, you need to throw that out. You have a soda, you got to throw that out. Oh, you have a candy bar, you have to throw that out. And the
That's
second you would
insane.
open it, there were people who would come in the theater. Excuse me, sir, we can't have you eating anything. If you'd like, you can go out in our hallway and eat it.
Oh my gosh. Can you guys imagine going to the movie, not being able to munch on some popcorn or sip on one of your favorite soda or beverages? Can you imagine how much the theater experience would change for you? I know for a fact my family probably would not have gone.
Absolutely. It's crazy to think that there was a time with that. But thankfully now, snacks are one of the biggest selling points at theaters, and they make a big push for it as well.
Oh yeah.
Number three, I have despite drive-in theaters having a major setback in popularity, there are still 349 drive-ins that still exist to this day. So drive-ins are
Woo-hoo.
still they're still making it, and we still have them alive. I mean, they may not be as big as back in the day, but they still have a lot. And then my final one is the first multiplex theater was created by AMC Theaters in 1963, offering multiple screens in a single complex. So
Hmm.
oftentimes theaters, back way back in the day, often only had maybe one, two, or three auditoriums. Multiplexes were the first time, and most theaters now are multiplexes. Are theaters that had up to around 15 to 20 screens in the theater, and that's how they were able to show multiple movies, and that's why most theaters now are multiplexes. Most of the time, anything over, I would say, five or six is usually considered a multiplex.
Wow. So it's safe to say the theater that was where the like flaming walk was and the bathroom was at the mall, at the Flagstaff
Yeah.
Mall, it was not a
It
multiplex,
was
that's
not.
for sure.
It only had two screens, and it was
Wow.
small. Yeah, it was small, but I mean, yeah, whereas, Harkins is a big chain, and yeah, multiplex, because
Man, you
obviously
blew
they
my
have like
mind.
15 with that. But that's all the fun facts I have, my friend. Let's hear what
Those
you
are
got.
some really good fun facts.
Yep.
Alrighty, so the success of 2009's Avatar sparked a resurgence in 3D films, leading many theaters to upgrade to 3D capable screens.
hmm Yeah, that's pretty crazy to think about. The thing that's sad though is not every one of those movies was adapted to 3D successfully.
No, no, no,
Avatar, the
no.
reason being is because they actually shot part of that in 3D,
Yeah, that is
which is why.
crazy.
Whereas a lot of movies that followed were converted to 3D. So
Oh, I didn't
obviously
know
it's,
that.
yeah. So like Clash of the Titans, I think the last couple Harry Potter films, they were all converted. Whereas Avatar, I know, was specifically shot on 3D.
That's beautiful. That
Yeah.
is beautiful. And watching Avatar for the first time in the theater when it came out during the
Mhm.
advent of XD or Cinemax or whatever they call it.
Yep.
In my theater it was called XD 3D. Oh my gosh, it was like you were there. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
you were there for 2009.
hmm
But anyway, my next one is movie theaters began offering flavored popcorn options, including cheese, caramel, and specialties. And this happened from the years of, I believe, late 2000s to 2010. So if you wanted like cheddar cheese or if you wanted some zany flavor, I'm sure they had it or still have it to this day. On the
Actually,
topic, oh, go right ahead.
Actually, funny enough, just really quick, at our Harkins, They actually make you buy the flavorings now. They no longer have them out in the open for people to just
Ah,
use.
you know what? I think you're right. I don't think I've seen one of those containers out where the butter is
Yeah, they
in
used to.
years.
They used to, but I
They
now
used
they
to.
make you buy it. It's just
Too
it's
many
crazy.
people took them home.
Yep, exactly. Anyhow,
Uh,
continue.
That's funny though. Okay, and then on the topic of reclining seats, which we talked about a little bit earlier, the 2010s saw theaters upgrading to plush reclining seats, making movie going more comfortable and enjoyable. I
Yep.
remember back in the day, you would sit in a basic chair and your butt would hurt at the end of the movie.
Oh, I
Now
know.
people are falling asleep on these comfy recliners, you know?
Yep, absolutely. It's wild.
Now I only have two more fun facts,
Yep.
so stay with me here. In the 2000s and 2010s, theaters often featured interactive on-screen games before the trailers where audiences could play trivia or guess movie quotes using interactive clickers or mobile apps,
I
adding a
remember.
fun and engaging element to the wait.
Our theater up here still does that. With our Revenge of the Sith re-release, we actually got to play a lot of those games on our phones because we got to go in and it was all Revenge of the Sith trivia.
Oh, that's amazing. I love
Yeah, it was
that.
all Star Wars and Revenge of the Sith trivia. Yep.
Unfortunately, the Harkens by Me doesn't do that, so
Oh wow,
I had to get rid of that trivia app.
that's sad. Yeah, yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and then my last one has to do with closed captions or
Mhm.
closed captioning, and it's actually really cool. I did not know this
Yep.
up until last week, actually. In the 2000s and 2010s, theaters began offering closed captioning devices, allowing deaf or hard of hearing viewers to read the dialogue and sound effects on a screen or device, making movies more accessible to a wider audience. I think that's so beautiful. That is
I
so awesome.
That's awesome as well. A lot of movie theaters are trying to be more accommodable to people with disabilities. I know even for
Yes.
people who are on the autism spectrum, they actually have screenings that are more liking um to their needs, for instance. So
Yes.
like I know like some of
Volume
them
isn't that
the
high.
volume isn't that high. There's room for people if they need to get up and walk around, they can. They kind of have a more spacious area in the theater, meaning like you don't have everyone sitting next to each other, meaning that they kind of block off a couple seats, leave a few open, kind of like the COVID era almost
Yeah.
and whatnot. I know Oppenheimer, that was huge for because, well, any Christopher Nolan movie, as we know, he loves his audio effects,
Oh,
and
yeah, he does.
he loves to make his movies loud. So I know that was a big one, and I remember one of my friends who is on the spectrum as well, like me. He went to one of those screenings and he said they toned it down by like 10. And obviously, I saw Oppenheimer in the regular
Mhm.
theater, and holy mackerel, that movie was loud. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, they that was a big one. But no, I'm glad that theaters are trying to be more accessible to different people and such.
Yes, yes, exactly. I went to go see Thunderbolts last week. Phenomenal movie, by the
I
way.
still need to watch that.
And leaving one of the theaters next to
Mhm,
the one that I was entering was this
mhm.
elderly couple who had what looked to be a device that could hold your phone. And it was one of those things that you could like
Yeah.
cling to a table and it holds onto your
Yeah,
phone.
yeah, yeah.
And that device actually was a closed captioning reader.
Oh
And I think you
wow.
can even I think you can even use your phone with it, like they
Yeah.
give you a code or something like that.
Mhm.
But I saw it for the first time and I was thinking, "Well, what is that?" And then I realized, "Oh yeah, that's for closed captioning." Because you don't really see that nowadays.
Yeah. That
Well,
is
in
true.
in every theater experience, but now it's picking up though.
For sure, it's definitely picking up. But no, that's really cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool. You had some good fun facts for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
let's keep the ball rolling. Let's go to trivia then.
Let's do it. Let's
All
do it.
right. Do you want me to start? You start?
Uh, we could just bounce off so you can go since I just talked about the fun facts.
Okay, sounds good. Just while I check. Okay, so on this topic, we now have our trivia. So, my first trivia question, I have four of them. I'll try and get through these as quick as I can. The first one I have is in 1905, a certain type of movie theater which only charged 5 cents and showed movies ranging from 15 minutes to an hour in a storefront were often known as what? And for those of you listening, to us as well. You can try and get the answers as well, or if you want, let us know if you got all the answers correct or knew what we were talking about. So yeah,
Oh gosh. The name of the theater.
do you want a hint?
Yeah, I'm completely stumped
It's
on this.
also the name of a cable channel, a very popular cable channel.
Very popular cable channel. It's not HBO.
Nope.
It's crap, I haven't thought about anything cable
Okay,
in a
I'll
minute.
narrow it down a little bit. A children's cable channel. And that's my last hint until you want the big
A
one.
children's, is it a Nickelodeon? No. Is it?
Hey! Yes.
No way.
Yes.
Okay, okay, okay,
It's
okay. Give
called
me context.
it's called a Nickelodeon. A Nickelodeon was a movie theater which only charged between 5 to 10 cents and showed movies from 15 minutes to an hour and were often located in a storefront. And the channel
Whoa.
Nickelodeon got its name from that very thing. Fun fact, my if you didn't get it and you didn't say a Nickelodeon, my last hint was gonna be Nick, and I was gonna say you need to finish that.
Nickelodeon.
Yep. I was gonna say you finish it, but yeah.
Oh my
So yes, a
gosh.
Nickelodeon is the answer. So
Oh, that's a great trivia question. I did not know that.
yep. And then number two, what movie franchise was the highest grossing in the early 2000s? Now, to clarify, it's a series that began and had the majority of its run in the early 2000s, but did start to wrap up in the 2010s.
It didn't start in the 90s. It
Oh,
started in the 2000s
it
then.
started in the 2000s,
And you said 2010s is around where it sort of died off.
where it wrapped up.
Harry Potter.
That's correct. Yep.
Yep.
Harry ding ding ding. Harry Potter is the correct answer. Harry
Yep.
Potter was and is to this day the highest grossing franchise film of all time with a total of 9.9 billion dollars,
Whoop,
which is
whoop.
the highest grossing movie franchise of the 2000s. However, in the 2010s, the Marvel Cinematic Universe beat it out.
They took over. No, that makes sense. That absolutely makes sense.
For sure. And then the next one, this you should easily get the answer on this one.
But
What
I won't though. Watch.
Okay, now this is kind of a two-parter. I'm going to be real.
Okay.
This is a bit of a two-parter, but it's a part of the same question. So the first part is, what is the highest-grossing movie of the 2000s?
Of the
We
2000s?
just literally were talking about it too.
Well, it's a Harry Potter film then, right?
Nope,
Oh
nope.
no, is it a Avatar?
It's Avatar. Yes,
Avatar. Yep, yep, yep.
Avatar is the highest-grossing movie with a income of 2.9 billion dollars when not adjusted for inflation. Now,
Oh,
here's the second part. When adjusted for inflation, what is the highest-grossing movie of all time? You got to think old for this one, really old.
when adjusted for inflation.
Hmm.
Godfather Part 2?
Nope. I wish. I'll give you one more guess, and then I'm giving you the answer.
Okay.
You got to go older than Godfather. You got to go back to the Golden Age, even maybe before.
Was
Maybe.
it Gone with the Wind?
Ding, ding, ding. It's Gone with
Yep.
the Wind. Gone
Yep.
with the Wind, when adjusted for inflation, is the highest grossing movie of all time with an income of $3.9 billion when adjusted for inflation.
Woo-hoo-hoo. Dang.
Yep.
Okay, okay.
And then the last one is, what popular movie theater concession stand ad is known for theater snacks singing songs to get people to visit the concession stand? You have to think kind of old for this one too. Not as old as Gone with the Wind, but a few years up from that.
Few years up
Actually,
from
maybe
that.
a couple decades.
Couple of decades. So that has to be what, like
The 50s.
50s to the okay. Ooh, there's no way I can know this. I it
Okay.
this I don't know. Yeah.
It goes like this. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. So the Loft Cinema, which is an independent theater here
Yeah.
in Tucson, Arizona, They play that before every movie, and I thought it was specific to The Loft. I didn't know that it was that. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God, you didn't know this?
I didn't know this. This is
Oh
amazing.
wow. No,
So
that
I
was
see every
huge
time I see a
before that,
movie
yeah.
there, then I see a piece of history. That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Let's All Go to the Lobby was an ad that was made by, I forget the guy's name, but it was made in the 50s and it was basically played before movies and often at the intermission of longer roadshow production films. And yeah, it's big. We need to put that on the Instagram for people who
Oh,
have
I
not seen
just
it.
wrote that down. I
Mm.
just wrote
I
that
was
down.
almost tempted to say edit it into what we're talking about now so people can know, but I think it's better if we put it on the Insta.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
For sure. And that is all the trivia I got. I'm happy to hear what you've got.
All right. What was the name of the first 4D movie theater, which combined 3D visuals with sensory effects like motion seats and scents, opening in the 2000s?
Oh shoot, I can't even think. That sounds like some William Castle stuff right there, with the vibrating seats. But
It's actually a lot earlier than I would have guessed. They were ahead of the game, that's for sure.
I don't know. I yield. I really don't know.
There's really no way that I could have given you a hint, so I hope you don't think that I'm stiffing you on that.
No,
I
I
don't
don't.
really know how to give a hint
It's
on this.
okay. It's okay.
But it's called the Lot Cinema in South Korea.
Oh, I didn't even
And
know this was a thing.
it opened in 2005.
Wow, that's
For 20
wild.
years they've had 4D movie theater experiences.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And we just got them like 10 years ago or something here in the US, where they
That's
became
wild. That is
really
wild, my
popular.
friend.
Yeah. They were
That is
really ahead
really
of the
wild.
game.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
is that is wild. Okay. Well, I
All
learned
right.
something new.
My second is in the 2000s, which fast food chain famously partnered with movie theaters to offer combo deals, including a movie ticket and a meal?
I think I know the name of this. I'm just gonna take a random guess, but I could be very wrong. Is it White Castle?
No, it's not. It's
Oh,
Taco Bell.
what? Taco Bell? I didn't know
Yep.
this. That's
So
crazy.
the promotions were called Taco Bell movie nights, and I do remember those.
Oh, okay. I have heard of this now. Okay.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
didn't
they're
do that up here
throwbacks.
though, but they do have White
Mm.
Castle little sliders that they serve at the theater here. That's why I said White Castle.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, okay.
Okay, wow.
Oh my gosh, that is funny. Okay, what pre-show feature became common in the 2000s where audiences were reminded to silence their phones, often through humorous or themed PSA style videos? I guess the answer is sort of in the question itself,
Is
but
it
what were they
like
called?
is it like turn off your phone or something like that? I'm trying to remember what it was
You're
exact.
pretty much on it. It's just silence your cell phone.
Silence your cell phones. Thank you. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And they were usually done through announcements or etiquette reels. I feel like you will know this next answer, and I
Okay.
feel like you guys will too, especially if you were younger in the 2000s,
Okay.
or even an adult. But which digital ticket? And I'll give you a hint for this one too, if you don't
Yep.
get it off the bat.
Okay.
Which digital ticketing platform became a go-to method for buying movie tickets online in the 2000s, helping to reduce long box office lines?
Oh, that's easy. Fandango.
Ding, 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 ding. For those of you who are not familiar with Fandango, you basically went online, bought your tickets online, and then you'd have your
Mhm.
tickets. Whereas back in the day, you couldn't go on the Harkins website or the AMC website or the Cinemark website to buy tickets. You
Yep.
could only see the movie times. You had to go on Fandango to buy them prior or buy them at the
Oh yeah.
office, at the
Oh
box
yeah.
office themselves.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And they were made popular by their really funny and sometimes raunchy TV commercials that used Muppet style puppets
I remember
to
this.
sell the platform.
I remember this.
Yep,
Very
yep.
PG-13, despite the
Oh
fact.
yeah.
Yeah, this is wild.
I'll be putting that also on the Instagram
All right,
Fandango.
sounds good. Yep. I got
And my last question, all right?
yep.
In the 2010s, some theaters introduced special screens designed for parents with infants. What were they often called? There are actually two.
I really don't know to be honest with you.
I didn't know this either, so this blew my mind too.
I'm just gonna
Sort of.
I'm just gonna take a shot in the dark.
Do it.
Screens for tots?
I love that actually. They should
I
have
don't
gone
know.
gone with that. They
No.
were less inventive actually and less creative.
Okay.
The first being Mommy and Me. Yep.
Oh!
Yeah, Mommy and Me. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
interesting. And then the second name that they would go by were Baby Friendly.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah, yeah.
It's wild.
Um, I've even seen some Instagrams and TikToks about these baby friendly screenings, and in them they also have like playpen areas too where you
Whoa,
can,
oh, that's
your child
cool.
can like play around while also watching.
That's cool.
Um,
Okay.
hey, I say make that for autistic adults. Give us a bunch of sensory
I would
things
love
and
that.
yes, exactly.
I would absolutely love that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And actually that concludes my trivia section.
Wow, good stuff. We always seem to nail it with the fun facts and trivia section.
Yes, that's my
I
favorite part for sure.
For sure. Well, we're rounding out here pretty soon. We just have a couple more segments, which are not going to take us that long, and then that's going to be another episode for us.
Yep.
Really good stuff. But looking at segment four, looking back, I feel like it's so interesting. You know, we've been talking this whole time about theater experiences we remember the most, and I think that's been kind of a constant with this, you know. But the one thing I kind of want to look at is what do you think made movie going in the early 2000s so special? And what do you think maybe we lost as a result of what we have now?
The types of films that are being
I
made
agree.
right now.
Yes.
I think that's the biggest difference because when we were children, everything was new and original, or it seemed like it was new or original or an adaptation, a direct adaptation, and not like a reanimation of an adaptation.
Yep.
Everything seemed to be the source or close to the source. Whereas now we have spin-offs and sequels and prequels and this and that, and Hollywood is definitely banking on their formula of
Yeah.
repeat, repeat, repeat.
Mm.
And I think that in doing so, you have the medium itself sort of deteriorating in standards. So you see like movies like Quantumania having
Yeah.
absolute doggy crap CGI,
Yeah.
and you'll watch Iron Man from like 2008 and the CGI is a million times better even though there's
Yeah.
like a 10 to 12-year difference. And a lot of that
Yeah.
has to do with overworked VFX artists, underpaid uh productions, things like that. And then also streaming has a lot to do with that too. So I
Yeah.
think the shift in standards definitely was the biggest thing that I saw compared to, say, the early 2000s in my experience.
I'd have to agree with you in that because really, when you look at movie theater experiences like that, I definitely see now a lot of it's formulaic and it just doesn't feel like a lot of people's hearts are in it anymore. It
No,
seems like
yeah.
everybody just wants a cash grab. And unfortunately, the industry is fine with that. I mean, look at Star Wars, for instance. The sequel Star Wars trilogy ruined the legacy of what Star Wars is and was, which is why most people,
Unfortunately.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is why most people, when you ask them, they'll say, the Star Wars, there is no sequel trilogy. It ends with Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. It ends at
And
6.
it ends
Yeah.
at six. And the thing is because they didn't honor the original legacy of Star Wars because they wanted to be so innovative. They wanted to be all VFX. And moreover, they kind of got what they wanted because I mean it's a movie that was not that great. I mean, yeah, I will admit I like Force Awakens more than the rest because I think it laid a good groundwork. I just think that they didn't layer it properly and I feel like they just didn't honor the legacy properly. It was more about what can we push and a lot of it also was at the time and I'm not one to take opinions with this, but I think it's kind of obvious. Disney was on their whole DEI quest when these movies were coming out. And sometimes I
Yeah.
think what Disney did is that instead of allowing allowing these characters to develop naturally and be empowering on their own. They were trying to force a narrative on the audience
They're
because
still doing that.
and they're still doing that because I think they feel that by forcing it will get the people to listen. But I think the thing is, people can listen, but if you want your message to be grasped, you need to develop the character properly as well.
The especially when it comes to a franchise like
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars, as much as it changed my life as a kid and as much as I adore it, given the movies, the books, the comics, the games, everything, the entire world really,
Yeah.
the fan base is some of the most toxic people I've ever met in
They
my
are.
entire life.
They
And I've
are.
met some pretty bad people.
And this toxicity did not begin really until the sequels came out. Before that, I
No,
mean,
no, no, no. They started when the movies came out because sci-fi
mhm,
was a heavily white male genre,
yeah.
and anyone who liked it other than that, was sort of seen as like, oh, you don't really belong here. Like, I saw this article, or I read this article of this woman who she adored Star Wars since the day
Mhm,
it came out. She saw it in
mhm,
1977,
yeah.
but she was always given crap for it because she's a girl, you
Okay.
know? And then when the prequels come out, you start getting people who are racist against Jar Jar Binks and Mace Windu. And even though you had Lando being one of the first black representations in
Mhm,
Star Wars, you still had people being racist and
mhm,
sexist and things like that. And then with these sequels, it's even amplified more because you have Rey and Finn, a
mhm,
white woman and a black man, basically starring off on this really big epic, on this big,
yeah.
you know, space opera, as they call it.
It wasn't brought to the biggest attention until
Mm,
the sequels came out. And that's probably why Disney also was trying to change the narrative on that because, yeah, there were these kinds of people in those days and whatnot. I think they just don't get talked about as much because now Star Wars is so universally loved, those stories kind of get put under the rug versus
yeah.
when the sequels come out now it comes back up. And I think that's when a lot of these stories started coming more to fruition.
Okay, I can see that. I can see that.
Hmm.
For me, I don't mind inclusion, diversity. I don't
Oh, I don't
mind that.
either.
It's how you do it. It's the
That and
writing.
that's
It's all in the writing.
and that's what I mean. Okay, so I'm gonna take really quick. Top Gun Maverick did it
Mhm.
far better because there is a female character in there who goes by the call sign of Phoenix. Now, I don't know if you've seen Top Gun Maverick, have you?
No, unfortunately, I've not.
Okay, you need to get up on that, but I'm just
I
gonna
know.
say I won't spoil anything, but her character's allowed to shine because not only is she a woman in a very male dominated world, but she actually gets developed. She's actually treated like she's one of them, but at the same time,
Hmm.
they don't try to make her masculine in any way or anything like that. She's still very feminine, but she gets
Yeah.
the proper development that's needed. So people aren't necessarily screaming, yay, feminism. It's speaking for itself and it's allowing that character to be empowering in her own right.
And what do they
And
tell us in film school? Show, don't tell.
exactly. Whereas with Star Wars, I feel it was forced because a lot of the marketing made it seem as though Finn was going to be the Jedi, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
then they change it and make it Rey. And obviously, because Kathleen Kennedy was mentioned, she was looking for a female version of Luke in a sense. And I think
Yeah.
she was worried, even though Finn, I think would have been cool because, he is a man of color who's portraying such a big character in the Star Wars. And I think the idea of a clone turned Jedi would have been sick.
It would have been amazing. It
That would
absolutely
have
would.
been, and that would have
I
been
did
just as
I didn't
groundbreaking
mind.
itself.
I didn't mind how, the framework of Force Awakened happens. It's
Hmm.
just all in the writing. Where is all this buildup,
Hmm.
Uh randomly inserting characters in positions
Yeah.
that don't naturally make sense. You have to give context. You
Hmm.
really do. And I think that Abrams really dropped the ball on this because he wanted to make more money, even more than when he remade Star Trek.
Yeah.
He was really just trying to get his name out there for under the Star Wars franchise, you know?
Well, that, but also he has a very different filmmaking style to Lucas and
That's a
all the directors
great
that came
point, yeah.
beforehand. Because Abrams is very much focused on something called the mystery box, which is basically
Oh,
you create a mystery around your story, and the whole time the movie you're trying to solve that. I just don't feel like that works for Star Wars, obviously, and the reason being is
yeah.
because Star Wars is something that you have to learn the journey as you go. You can't leave it as a mystery. Like in the original film, we know that they're going to save Princess Leia, but the question is how, who, what? How is Luke going to grow from this time of not knowing anything about the Force to now realizing he is the biggest Force user in the galaxy and he can change the tide of everything that's going to happen? And the thing, too, is I feel like they all follow a lot of these movies from the early 2000s follow the hero's journey almost to the T.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas I feel like now they don't follow that because now it's seen as too formulaic when yet what you're doing is even more formulaic than following the hero's journey.
How ironic.
It is ironic for sure. It's
Yeah.
wild, but no, I think for me just to wrap that point up is basically when you look at that, it's just something in the realm of, what made it special was people poured their hearts and blood and soul and tears
Mhm.
into these films. And I feel like there was even, I mean, obviously, there was not the greatest amount of inclusion in a lot of older films. We all know that.
Mhm.
But I think even in the early 2000s, they were trying to make some of these characters bigger, but I think there was just more an emphasis on stories that just didn't have that because they had come out in an era when stuff like this wasn't really thought of. So they
Mm,
wrote it
yeah.
in a certain way and people just weren't thinking about it. But now people are thinking about it. I think now it's kind of like people are looking back and they're going, yeah, maybe we didn't do that. We should try and do that now. And I get where they're coming from. I do not have a problem with including it. Just do it right.
Amen. Exactly. I mean, it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. I mean, granted, the message is clear if it's clear cut and if it's appreciated by the
Mhm.
audiences, heck yeah. But it's really how you execute it. It's how you
Mhm.
execute it.
Absolutely, and I think that that's a perfect point, with all of that. Um, Really quick, we talked a lot kind of before about movie theater etiquette. But also we kind of look at how movie theater experiences can be sometimes bad. And
Oh yeah.
just really quick, the only big one I can think of is we already kind of talked about annoying audience members with
Yeah.
phones and different things
Mhm.
like that. But obviously, some other things that we don't think about are movie glitching and cancellation due to malfunction. Just really
Oh yeah.
quick, have you ever had this happen? I've only had it once. I've never had a glitch, but I have had a movie get canceled because of a malfunction.
So it happened once and for the life of me I cannot remember what movie it was.
Okay.
But, it started glitching because there was a big storm, so there must have been some sort of power
Oh,
outage around the
wow.
area,
Okay.
and the movie was glitching about 10, 15 minutes into the movie,
Okay.
so manager comes out, apologizes, says, "We're gonna restart the movie." Okay, all fine and dandy. Movie restarts, about 10 minutes in, it keeps glitching, lights come on, manager comes out and says, "You know what? I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to reimburse you guys for another movie. The storm is, it's really messing with our wiring or whatever." And everyone understood and it was,
Yeah.
it was fine, but um that's the only memory that I really have of it, yeah.
Same. I only had it happen once. It was Skyfall, the James Bond movie. I went to go watch that with a
Oh,
friend of mine.
beautiful soundtrack by the
It
way.
is a great soundtrack for sure. But we went to go watch Skyfall, and I had already seen Skyfall, thankfully, the weekend prior, but I was going again with another friend of mine,
Mm.
and we couldn't watch it because what happened was the screen was going blacked out because of the certain effects in the film, and two of the speakers blew because of how big of a scale that
Whoa.
some of the chase scenes were. And this was not in a big theater. This was in one of the smaller ones, and the manager came in and he said, "I'm so sorry, we're trying to get this working, but it's gonna take longer than we thought. We're gonna have to reimburse all of you." And they did, and then me and my friend changed out our tickets and we went and watched Lincoln instead, Steven Spielberg's film Lincoln.
Oh, very cool,
Yeah,
very
that was a
cool.
great movie though, by the way. I'm kind of glad we changed it because I really had wanted to watch Lincoln as well. And I'm a huge fan of
I
Steven
see.
Spielberg, so
No, for
anything he
sure.
does, I'll go see. So
I
that's
have
the
not
only
seen
time.
that yet either.
Yep,
I have
that's
to
the
add that to my
only
list.
time for sure. But just really quick, also, before we round out this section, there was also the idea of movie theater birthday parties. I personally never experienced one. What about you?
No, I never
The
experienced one
the
either.
most I've ever experienced was just getting a group of friends together and saying, "Let's go watch this movie at this time on my birthday." That was it.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. Yeah.
Because the party experience is very expensive. Do you know how expensive it is to rent out a whole movie theater?
Oh yeah, it's in the hundreds. It's
Yeah,
definitely in the
it's in
hundreds.
the hundreds. Like it's crazy expensive. So for that, I'd rather just get some good friends together and say, let's go at 12:45 to watch whatever, you know.
No, yeah.
I'd much rather do that. And then we can go get food after and then have cake. Like that would be a
Yeah.
much better experience to me,
Yeah.
you know.
I think the way that the birthday parties worked in the theaters that I went to was they would reserve a little room for you that was next to the theater, and they would have like the cake and ice cream and pizza, and your friends would be there, and then I think you would get taken to your movie and you'd see your movie. So I think that that's a cool idea, but unfortunately, I never did that. I think it would have been cool though to do.
I think it would have been as well. And looking back, that's a great section. I think that's a great place to conclude and move on to our final segment. Where are we going next? And basically, that's a big, good question because we don't know what the future's going to hold. We don't know if maybe we'll see a resurgence into some of these bigger franchises, or maybe even ones that have been yet to be told. At, excuse me, who knows if we'll start seeing a resurgence in original storytelling again.
Let's
Um,
hope.
let's hope because I feel like that's been really a detriment to people who have watched movies and whatnot. But the biggest thing I always kind of see is like people always ask, are theaters just dying or are they evolving? And the thing is, I think it's a bit of both, if I'm being honest. I mean, I think some of the smaller mom and pop theaters, the smaller Nickelodeons, those are obviously going under, but there's obviously big chains still like Harkins, AMC, Cinemax, a lot of those, and they're still going very strong. I
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I definitely want to hear your thoughts on this. I think there'll always be a need for movie theaters. I think there'll always be people pushing for that. And I think there's still a lot of filmmakers that are still very staunch on my movies have to go to theaters or should be going to theaters.
Well, I hope that that's the case
Hmm.
because that is a dream of mine for sure is to create something and then see it on the big screen.
Likewise.
Um, as much as I hate to admit that a lot of independent cinema and or a lot of independent theaters and
Hmm.
as John was saying, smaller Nickelodeon businesses, uh, as much as I hate to admit that they're dying, I I don't really see any of the big franchises dying off anytime soon unless we have something major like another pandemic or
Yeah.
something like that. And let's all hope that that does not happen, obviously.
Yeah.
But unless we have something big like that happen again, I don't really see these things going away, and that actually makes me really happy.
Same, and I think that that's the biggest thing because I mean, you still have big names like Christopher Nolan, Steven Spielberg, a lot of these
100%.
directors who are going to insist that their movies stay in theaters. Now, I know Spielberg and a lot of the classic directors are starting to get up there in age, and obviously, once they pass, then the legacy is going to move on to people like us, and it's
Yeah.
really, I think, up to us to make sure that if we want to keep the theaters alive, that we insist, hey, we want our movies being shown in theaters. Yes, we understand the home video market's big, but our visions need to be seen on the screen. And I think that's what's important.
As long as theaters continue to give the experience that they give without making us pay an arm and a leg,
Yeah.
I don't see them going anywhere really.
Likewise, same here.
Yeah. Now, will
Um
they ever lose their charm? What do you think?
I don't think so. I think that the theater has a unique charm, and I think despite the fact that some people may not always like the movie going experience, I think in the end it does have the charm of not only being bigger and better, but the fact of the matter of seeing something as an experience. The theater
Mhm.
going is an experience, and I think people realize that. I think obviously there are those that they're just like we don't care about the experience, we just want to watch the movie. But I think in the end there's just something about going to a theater you can't capture when you're watching in your home.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, yes, you eventually you'll have to watch that movie in your home, you especially if it's something you love, and it's because movies are not going to be shown in theaters forever, but during their run, it's big. And can you imagine? I mean, there people have bragging rights of having seen said movies in theaters on their original run, because I mean, there's one thing of
Hmm.
watching it as a re-release, which I still think counts,
Yeah.
because that still goes toward the budget, the box office budget, obviously.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I mean, there's just something different about that. So I think it will always have its
Mhm.
charm. I
Yeah,
really do.
I agree. I agree. I think there's something special about the movie going experience that even seen in movies of different countries, people from different walks of life. Everyone loves the movies.
Yeah.
Everyone,
Oh yeah.
everyone.
Pretty much, yeah. I think I only know maybe one or two people that are just not into movies, but all my other friends, all my other colleagues in life, everybody loves movies, pretty much.
Generally, yes, yes. There
Generally.
are people who don't enjoy it, but generally, I would say a good majority of the world's populace enjoy seeing a movie if they have access to it.
Absolutely. For sure. And I think also that brings us to our next point, the importance of supporting movie theaters, really.
Support them, people. Come
Support movie
on.
theaters because the big thing is that I know a lot of movies and stuff are coming out on streaming now, but there's still a lot of good stuff coming out in theaters. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of it now is people are, it's easy to pick and choose. It's not as easy to be surprised now. I think with
Yeah.
movies that came out in the early 2000s and such, even if it wasn't that big of a movie, people I think were willing to take a chance on it. They're just like, yeah, I want to watch a movie, but I'm not feeling Spider-Man tonight. I'm not feeling a big franchise like Lord of the Rings or
Mhm.
Harry Potter. Maybe I want to watch something like I don't know. I'm trying to think of popular movies that came out at the time. A Brilliant Mind, or Road to
Yeah.
Burdetten, or The Departed,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something of that. It's like I want to watch something like that, and those were also big in the movie theaters as well because I mean those were the ones that were winning Academy Awards. I mean,
Yeah, you
yeah,
think of the
Lord of the
Bourne
Rings,
movies too. Mission
yeah,
Impossible, the Bourne movies,
yeah,
everything
Mission Impossible,
action.
Bourne. Yeah, the action genre was really picking up. You have James Bond also as well
Oh,
with
yeah, the
Casino
Daniel
Royale,
Craig, yeah.
Daniel Craig, yeah, and such. And sometimes you want to watch movies like that, and now it's kind of like James Bond is so formulaic to this point to where it's kind of like, oh, okay, I can predict what he's going to do next. Whereas back in the day, even though they were books, you had no idea what James Bond was going to do. You're thinking to yourself, oh, he's falling in, he's trapped, he's got a chain around his ankle. Is he really going to make it out this time? Now you're going, of course he's going to make it out. He's James Bond.
Well, it's also going back to what I was saying earlier about how just watching the trailer, it tells you the entire movie. So some people will watch a trailer and they're like, "Well, I don't have to watch that since I know what happens," you know?
Absolutely. So I think it's definitely important to support any theater of any kind, whether it's a big
Yep.
chain, whether it's an independent theater. Just go watch, just go try something in the theater. You'll be
Yeah.
surprised sometimes how good a movie is, despite it not being a franchise film or something huge. I mean, I
There's also
remember
nothing wrong with rewatching movies too.
go rewatch movies. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've gone to watch a bunch of movies multiple times. So yeah, absolutely. Go rewatch them if you have to. But yeah, so I guess the big thing now we have to look at is what could the possible future of movie going look like? I mean, it's kind of like, we're at where we're at now with franchise films, but where do you see it going, maybe?
Well, one thing that has been in the talk for a while to see if this is actually a thing,
Mhm.
virtual reality theaters.
No, no,
That
no,
might be a thing. Well, that it's
no,
huge right now.
no,
AI movie
no.
experiences. I mean, at the end of the day, we can't really control what's
That is
trending.
true, but still,
And,
I feel
at
like that.
this rate, we might even get a VR experience or something like that.
Oh, that's gonna be
I don't
wild.
know. It
I feel like
will,
that
it
would give me
will.
a headache, though, is the
Oh,
thing.
I'm sure.
That's the only
That's the
reason
thing.
I'm not the biggest fan of that. And also I just feel like theaters are meant to be kind of show and tell. I feel like when you put VR into it, you have to make the movie for that. You can't just
Yeah.
throw a random movie in there and be like VR experience. You need to make the movie to be that experience
Yeah,
if you're
yeah,
gonna do
and
that.
And the movie theater experience is also a place where you can share the experience with others, strangers,
Absolutely.
friends, whatever. And with VR, I feel like it would definitely deviate from that and force you to sort of find solitude in this movie, which I don't think was the intention of the director. The director
Nope.
wants people to react. It wants people to laugh and cry in unison, all these things, you know.
Absolutely.
But that's all I can speculate. What about you?
I hope that maybe there's a resurgence for original storytelling. I still think there's a
Oh
demand
yeah.
for it. I think with studios like A24 already starting to do that, and we can see now that independent films from places like A24 and some of these lower known studios are what are winning at the awards now and what are
Yeah.
being held in high regards and seen as art, whereas a lot of the franchise films, they're not winning anything. And I know obviously the
Yeah.
Oscars are really trying to push for that. Obviously, we had a little bit of success with Black Panther getting a Best Picture nomination.
Yeah, yeah,
Unfortunately,
yeah.
though, it was just up against a lot of other great films that unfortunately we're going to have the bias over that. And
Yeah.
now the Academy has actually even mentioned that in order for people to vote in the Best Picture category, they have to watch all nominated films.
Well, my question is why wasn't that instilled at the dawn of the awards? Because
I
that's
think,
just ludicrous to me.
I think the problem,
That's
yeah,
all just
uh,
clicky
yeah.
popularity money
And
contests.
I think that's what people realize. I mean, because you look at a movie like Shakespeare in Love from 1998, that wins Best Picture when it was up against Saving Private Ryan, the biggest picture of 1998.
Whoa,
And
that's
and
pretty
and many
intense.
people thought that Private Ryan was going
It
to
was
win the
snubbed.
Oscar,
Yeah.
but the only award that it really won in the big category was Best Director for Steven Spielberg
Wow.
and whatnot, but it failed to win best picture because the Academy thought, well, it's going to be too dark, whatnot, and like well,
It's
a
the
lot of us haven't.
politics.
And again, a lot of us didn't watch it because we didn't feel we could stomach it because it's a very intense movie
Oh, it is. Yeah,
and whatnot, but
absolutely.
for good reason. I mean, but really in the end, it's kind of like, it's kind of like where's the line? And I'm
Yeah.
glad that that's being implemented now. I think beforehand it just was kind of expected. People watched more movies and people were not as biased. But I think once that the bias started to show, they were like, wait a sec, people are now just picking and choosing their favorites or what they feel
Hmm.
is the most representative of this category or of this stigma, or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whereas it's kind of like there are probably plenty of movies that have all that, but they're better than what you're picking, just
Yeah.
because on face value it looks like that. But you'd be surprised how many movies actually do it right who get missed out all the time
Oh yeah.
and whatnot. So yeah, but no, I definitely think that there's going to be a return for original storytelling. I don't know if the spec script era will ever return. I think that's long and gone now, unfortunately. Just because of how many people now are trying to write spec scripts. It's not like when Rocky came out when you had Sylvester Stallone and he's like, "Oh, this is a great concept." Now everyone's trying to write a Rocky. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
not necessarily a sports Rocky, but trying to write the next big thing, and
Yeah.
it's becoming more selective for sure. And the last thing I have is how do you think nostalgia can shape the next era? I think that's a big one, and I think that maybe some of what we're talking about is actually maybe answering that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just look at what we were talking about prior to this, the Revenge of the Sith re-release.
Yep.
Movie theaters are paying homage to movies that not only made up our childhood, but changed the movie going experience and changed the uh the Hollywood experience altogether. And
Absolutely.
if we stick to nostalgia, we can get retro themed nights, we can get more curated film festivals, we can have more events that unite cinephiles in a way that is both productive
Yeah.
for the climate of movies being made at the time,
Mhm.
but also to help and reinvigorate this fervor and fire to the younger generation,
Yep.
make such a good experience honoring our past that the future can't help but to make it even better.
Absolutely. I think you nailed it perfectly. I don't know if I can add a whole lot more to that because that's exactly what I would have said as well.
Yeah, no
I
worries.
I think really also the big thing too is honoring the legacies that came before it, even if you're not paying direct homage to it. Because what I
Mm,
mean by that is not just in movies, but just in the experiences as well. Because when you go back to when movies were created, they were created for people to get away from the world for a few hours at a time and to be able to immerse yourself in a world completely out of your own. Are your problems still going to be there when you get out of the movie? Sure, but maybe you'll have a new perspective afterwards. Maybe you'll think a little bit more clearly about some of the choices you make in life because movies can hit home in that area too. And I think now with every film trying to be formulaic, it takes away from that at times and the experience gets changed as well.
oh
And
yeah.
I feel like the biggest thing that can really do that with nostalgia is when you look at something that's big. Okay, I'll give you an example. Top Gun Maverick and Cobra Kai. I know Cobra Kai is a TV show, both did that really well. And I'm not talking about just in the in-universe idea, but it set the standard that even futuristic things can still have good substance and be successful, whether it's
Yeah.
from a pre-existing concept or whether it's completely original. And I know both Cobra Kai and Top Gun have pre-existing quantities, but the reason I use them as examples is because they show that there's still hope out there. There's still lots of people willing to tell stories in the correct way, and they can still get across their message as well as challenge some of the stereotypes and biases that are out there, and they can still honor the legacy, not just of the film that they're making and stuff, but of the movie going and television experience itself.
Oh, beautifully stated. I love that. I really do. There's really no excuse. There's no excuse.
No, and really honoring the legacy just comes down to respecting what came before it and trying to add on what you can to it and still be respectful to what came before it.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely. And
still
not
possible.
everything's about money, people. I mean, money
Exactly.
runs the world, but yes, but art can be created in the most simple of ways. It's the fabric that unites us as humans.
Absolutely. You said it beautifully, my friend. Well, with that, I think that's another episode in the bag.
Ding ding, let's go, guys. We've made it through the sixth episode of Rewind Room.
If you guys are still here after an immense 3.5 hours almost, we
We're
hope
like a
that
blockbuster film ourselves.
pretty much. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope if you stayed around this long, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And yeah, do you have any final thoughts before we close out?
Go watch a movie, guys. Go to your local theater. Go to a movie
Do it.
theater, buy some popcorn, take your friends out, take yourself out. Doesn't matter if you go by yourself. It's awesome. I've done it my entire life.
Yep, same.
Support the arts if you can. Seriously. If you can't, if you find yourself that you can't, then that's totally fine. Just let's just do it, guys. Come on. Let's keep movie theaters alive.
Keep movie theaters alive, folks. We need it. It's a need for us and such. But with that, if you don't have anything else, Ramona, I'll take us out.
Please do.
Alrighty. Well, thank you all for listening to another episode of Rewind Room. Rewind Room is a podcast that is available on wherever you get your podcast. We are on Spotify, Apple, Audible, Amazon Music. We're even on places like Deezer and some of the other different podcasting sites. So pretty much wherever you get your podcast, you can find us. And make sure if you want to see the version where you can see both me and Ramona talk, go to our YouTube Rewind Room Official, and you can find all episodes there in video format. And maybe even intercut with some B-roll from the eras to give you an even more immersive experience. Make sure to follow us, give us a like, and hit that little bell down below and share this podcast with all of your friends. I know everyone has a love for nostalgia in some way, shape, or form. And even though we may not touch on it, just know we'll probably get to yours one day as well, because don't forget, this future is going to one day be nostalgic as well. So I can't wait to
Yep.
cover that eventually as well. But anyways, I just wanted to say thank you everyone for listening to Rewind Room and for being here with us for another episode. My name is Jon,
And I'm Ramona.
and we will catch you on the rewind. Take care, folks, and have a blessed day.